I'll call the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission to order for Monday, September 18th, 2023. We record that all are present for the attendance. Let's move on to Article 2. Pledge of allegiance. Please stand and face the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Moving on to Article 3, I'll hear a motion to approve the current agenda.
So moved.
Support by Member Ingo, supported by Member Racy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move on. Article 4, does any member wish to disclose a conflict of interest?
Nope.
No. Hearing none, we'll move forward. Article 5, we will acknowledge at this time any visitors who wish to come forward and speak. We have one public hearing for the first case. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. 3680 Buttrick Avenue. So if you're here for that, wait, please. Maddie, anybody online? All right. We're going to move on. Let's move on to Article 6, case number 23-3784. Satteroff. Thank you, Maddie.
They don't seem to be here yet. They may have gotten confused because they also were at last week's meeting. But I will present their case for them.
Okay.
And I have a phone number if we need to call them.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so we have the Satteroff family applying for an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet. They are on the southeast corner of 36th and Buttrick. They've got a little bit over 4 acres in our ARC district. They just got a variance last week from the Zoning Board of Appeals for the placement of their building because they're a corner lot. It would be technically considered their front yard, so they were approved for the placement, and then they're here tonight for, well, their application is here tonight for approval for a 40-foot by 70-foot pole barn for 2,800 square feet. Their property is approved to have more than one accessory building. This would be their first accessory building. It's indicated to be used for storage of, they have a RV, various other vehicles and recreational vehicles, as well as just general storage. So personal use is the proposed use for the barn. The nearby properties in the vicinity have similar size. There's kind of a mix of uses in this area on 36th and Buttrick, some commercial, some residential. So directly to the south of them, there is a property with 4 accessory buildings, and it has an equestrian use on it as well. Beyond that, when we referred to the accessory building inventory list, the average approved size is 2,200 square feet. We did receive a letter of support from the neighbor, which I included in the packet for you. We considered the factors for approval, and we didn't see that it would cause any negative impact on adjacent properties. Doesn't really have super close parcels. It has streets adjacent to 2 and larger parcel sizes. It's also screened by a lot of the trees. When you drive by, you won't even be able to see it, but they will have a separate access for the building if approved. Yeah, that's kind of the gist of it. The impact for neighbors we didn't see to be a problem. The size is a little larger than the average for the area, but we didn't see it to be an issue. And new access, they do know that they may need a curb cut from the Kent County Road Commission if approved. And the conditions I would set for my recommendation of approval is our typical standards of adhering to our outdoor lighting and to not use the building as a home occupation, for a home occupation or as a dwelling. That is my summary. Do you have any questions?
Anything from the neighbors besides the recommendation?
Pardon?
Anything back from the neighbors? Did we send out postcards? I suspect we did.
No, just the one letter that I included in the packet.
It's nothing from Jim Williams to the south, who owns the piece of property that butts it.
No, nothing from them.
Any other questions for Madison?
Yeah, where's the existing gravel drive that they're
So
gonna use?
it's on this, it's like about right here.
I don't think we can. Does
So-
that work? Cause it doesn't work on mine.
I don't know if gravel might have been a stretch when he was describing it to me. I think it's more like they mowed that area down and they've used it for access in the past. So they know that they don't have to really clear many trees for the access, I think was the intention of.
Okay.
what
So
he
there's
was
going to
saying.
be a separate access just for this building.
Yes, they're planning to, but they can also access from the west side driveway.
They need a curb cut approval from County Road Commission.
They would, yes, if they want to do that.
Yes, and this may be a silly question, but is there, this outbuilding is considerably larger than their home. Is that atypical, or does that play a role in how you look at something like this?
It does typically play a role. We have approved other accessory buildings that are larger than the home. I also will note that when we talk about square footage of the home, we don't always include like finished basement or that kind of thing. So it might not actually reflect the full habitable space in the home. Because it's the ARC district, I didn't see it as much of an issue because we have larger accessory buildings in the ARC district compared to homes, generally speaking. This was in the R1 or R2, I would say. Don't really see that ratio as being our preference.
My second question is that the vehicles and, I'll call them vehicles, that he described storing here would take up, to my mind's eye, less than 15% of that entire building. Again, I'm looking at the size of this and wondering if we examine the purposes or potential uses of this. And one thing that comes up to me, could he be using this for commercial storage in addition to his own?
Mm.
And is he prohibited from doing that by ordinance?
Well, if he was making a profit off of storing other people's belongings in his building, it would be using it as a business essentially. So it would not be permitted by the township unless he got a special permit of some sort.
I'm Bruno.
That last sentence of making a profit, what if he's looks at it, he amortizes and he says, I'm making a loss. So if he's charging someone, is it a business?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say that's a good way to
Well-
describe it.
There's a difference between gross profit and net profit.
True. But still a business.
being-
If you're charging somebody, it's a business.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Right. But
He's soliciting business of others, you could say.
Right.
All right, is there, so there's a picture of the current drain field, which seems odd to me. I'm not a civil engineer. But it's on the opposite side of a pond from the house. So we've got septic tanks, a pond, and then the drain field. So am I to infer this is gonna be a drain field for the accessory? Is it gonna have a bathroom in the accessory building, or is this drain field drawn in the wrong spot?
No, that's the drain filter.
That's existing.
Really? So this is, so his piping to his drain field goes around the pond?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that's what it shows. I was surprised at that also.
Yeah, he didn't
I would say that's
show his
probably wrong,
actual
would be
plans
my-
from the
I
health
can't
department.
imagine that
It's that far away.
that is that far away.
Especially with the septic tanks being where they are. I just don't see
Exactly.
it.
Something doesn't seem right to me.
It happened when we talked to the applicant, we asked that.
Okay.
Also,
The applicant's not here, right?
Yeah.
it doesn't look like he's here
I
tonight.
think we're gonna have questions for the applicant. Can I hear a motion to table this?
We can still hold the public hearing tonight since it's noticed and then bring the
I
applicant
don't
back.
want to hold a public hearing without the applicant here to answer if there's.
Well, that's just for public comment from neighbors, so we can still hold that public hearing.
And it wouldn't
then
have to be
questions right up
re-noticed.
at the next meeting. We've done that in the.
I appreciate we've done in the past. I don't particularly love the idea of it. I want the applicant here.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
if we don't do the public hearing at this meeting, then do we have to reschedule this with the public hearing at another date and re-notify all the neighbors?
Yes, we would have to.
It seems to me like a worthy thing for the applicant to show up.
I'm,
I'm not making the motion. Somebody would like
Being
to
devil's
make-
advocate, is there anyone here for the public hearing? We could have the public hearing, there's no one here.
and get that out of the way.
Okay, all right, so let's hear a motion to move to public hearing.
So moved.
Motion made by member Ingles,
Second.
supported by member Moxley. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we'll move to public hearing. Thank you, Maddie. Anybody like to come forward and speak on this matter?
Maddie, could you make sure that he's not on Zoom?
Yes, good idea.
Thank you.
I don't think it was earlier, but-
Excellent. Then I make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support.
Member Rissy makes a motion to close the public hearing. Member Ingles supports. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none.
Member, Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion that we table this.
But before we do, can I get a discussion on the record so that when we come back, I can remember it?
Of course.
What's everyone's thoughts on also having access from the west side? So that's a lot of surfacing to go between his current drive and his what would be a new storage building. So he's gonna have access from 36th. Would we consider putting conditional in where he could not access from his current residential drive? Because that's just a lot of.
I want to hear from him. I
Want to
just,
hear from-
yeah,
okay.
you know what I mean? Like, who knows what he has in mind?
Because he doesn't have that drawn on here, so I would say
Doesn't.
that it would appear to me that his only access is going to be off there.
He's like, they'd have to go over the well and
I would agree, but
Because that's what the
our
plan
staff
showed.
said that he could access it from the
Sure.
west.
Yeah,
That was her word. So I would just,
no, I'd love to hear. And
Okay.
again, to Joe's.
Perfect.
What's he gonna use it for?
I know, it's big.
Okay.
I mean, that thing is huge.
It is big.
Perfect.
For what it's worth, I was at the ZBA meeting last week when they did present this. And the only access they had was from 36th Street.
Okay. So perhaps they'd stipulate to what you're asking for. I don't think that's unreasonable to ask, but
If they were here.
without them here, there's nothing. So-
Yeah, and I would want to ask that access is, I think Joe was saying, like, it looks like it's just mowed. I mean, is it going to be crushed gravel? Is it going to be black? Like, is it,
I want
what's?
to understand the drain field. I don't think that's right. Jimmy's point, they do exist like this? What the heck?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I heard a motion from member Rissy to table it. I hear support from member Engel. Yes,
Can I add a couple items to that motion
sure.
that maybe staff could talk with the applicant, the items that you just mentioned, the drain field, the driveway, the size? What were the other concerns that were brought up?
commercial purpose.
Commercial uses.
Yeah, commercial uses, renting space to a buddy to store his jet ski or his classic car kind of a
I
thing.
think, let's hear what they're gonna use the other 85% of the space for.
Okay,
I think, you know what I mean? Like that,
Yeah.
that's a broad.
but it just, that way he can come in prepared.
Yep, I think that's smart, Scott. Thank you. All right. Motion made by member Rissy with steps given to Maddie. I think you've got those, right? Cool beans. Supported by member Engel. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're going to table it. Thank you all. Let's move on to case number 23-3789 Craft and 60th East LLC. Brian, you're pretty tight on that, just so you know. You're pretty tight on that if you're gonna do a big, yeah.
Brian, are you aware that the camera doesn't work on this computer?
We don't want you to see, Scott. That's fine.
It's like years.
Be thankful your computer works at all.
I didn't ask if I could see it. I just asked if it was aware I
I was-
couldn't see.
I was not aware.
But if you spot down next to Timmy,
I didn't think that one worked either.
I was hoping you said I arrived early and purposely disabled that, right?
I know when I sat down on the end years ago, that one didn't work.
We can take a look at that.
Okay,
Thank you.
good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate your support.
It's so overwhelming, isn't it?
After our last few meetings, I'm not used to having so few people by.
I know.
So it's a
Yeah.
little different again, but.
Just sit back and enjoy.
So tonight the applicant's requesting a basic plan review to create a new PUD to allow for a light industrial development project. The project would consist of 3 buildings with associated parking lots and driveways and would be located on approximately 27 acres at the northeast corner of Craft and 60th Street. This property is just to the southeast of the current Lax facility, which is on the west side of Craft. The site would include an approximately 236,000 square foot painter building, a 227,000 square foot assembly building, and 140,000 square foot warehouse building. So while those uses would appear to be permitted in the transitional industrial zoning district, the applicant should provide some additional information to describe what exactly those buildings will be used for, as well as kind of the site as a whole and how that would function together. They should also provide a timeline to indicate when they anticipate beginning construction on each building, if that'll be all at one time or phased or what that might look like. The basic site plan does include a significant deviation from the zoning ordinance, which is the number of parking spaces provided. For the zoning ordinance, there should be 798 parking spaces provided on the site, but the site plan only includes 314. So the applicant should prepare to provide additional information to demonstrate how that site can be adequately served by so few spaces. The site's currently comprised of 5 different parcels, and those parcels would need to be combined into one to avoid setback and buffer yard issues then between buildings and parking lots. The master plan designates the properties as transitional mixed use, which does allow for similar uses to the transitional industrial zoning district, as long as utilities are available, and there are utilities there located on Craft Avenue. So the utility extensions will be reviewed by the township engineer as well as the city of Grand Rapids. The applicant will also need to receive approval for the curb cuts from the Kent County Road Commission and submit a full civil plan set that will be reviewed by the township engineer. So with the basic plan review, this is really just an introduction phase to the project to have, again, the basic plan to see what it may look like. So if there are any questions or requests of the applicant, this would be a good time to address those. The next phase will be the public hearing for the preliminary development plan, which is the more formal site plan review, which will be scheduled once the applicant provides the 9 items listed in the staff report there, and then any additional items requested by the planning commission tonight. And the applicant is in attendance here to help answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Brian? I'm rolling.
Yeah, who pays for the water and the sewer hookup?
It's typically on the applicant, the property owner, then
Okay.
to facilitate that.
I just want to verify. Yeah, thanks.
Remember, no,
Water, stormwater retentions, where's that?
So that's on the north of the property. They show potential management basin, and that's one that are, again, they don't have the calculations at this stage. That'll be for the next one, but they're obviously adding a lot of impervious surface there. So that's something our engineer will be taking a quick look at. But right now they show a stormwater management basin to the north part of the property.
Is that existing, Brian? Is there one up there right now?
I don't believe so, no, because this is all just kind of vacant land
There's
currently.
some houses there.
There's some building there.
Train sits right to the north.
There's a few to the north, yep. So there's not any improvements right now on this site.
But 60th and Craft, there's also like a business there, something on
Not on the northeast side right now, it's all, and the
Okay.
applicant can speak more to that as well, but
There was years ago. No, that's
It's a big
68.
field.
was it, that's not what the baseball field is it? Or was?
not to my knowledge.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's like right here somewhere. There's like I always see like a big steel building with, there's an old Jeep that sits out front and there's other stuff that's there
That's the
too.
other side of the intersection.
The other side of Craft.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
west.
Yeah.
That's west of that.
Okay.
This is just,
On the other
there's some
side,
houses here and that's it. Like there's.
And I
3
think those have
residences.
even all been removed now, I believe.
Okay, to the north.
You're right. It's on the other side of Craft.
Any other questions for Brian?
Nice job, Brian.
Thank you.
And then, yeah, the applicant's here as well if you have
The
questions.
applicant is here and wishes to step forward. We'd appreciate that. You'd state your name and your connection to the applicant. We'd appreciate it.
Hi, my name is Patrick Knight and I'm a facilities engineer for Lax.
So,
Member
so,
Brown?
so to that point, the applicant is listed as Craft and 60th East LLC. But then I see on the, preliminary site plan drawing, that it was basically, so let me get this correct here. I think it says prepared for Lax Industries. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Lax
yeah.
Enterprises.
That's so I represent Lax Industries, yeah.
Okay. With that and the fact that we have a couple of PFAS lax sites within a few mile radius of where we're sitting currently, I would make a motion that we table this item until we get some input from our new township manager.
So there's no item to be decided on tonight. We're just asking for additional information that we want to see for the next
I
step
think we
of
can
the
still table
process.
this, no?
Well, there's no decision. So we're
Sure,
just,
but we could table the preliminary and giving them input until we talk to our new manager about any potential PFAS issues, right?
Because I'd want to capture any concerns in that preliminary information we give them. That's why I prefer to table it.
we can, or yeah, we can have that discussion again at a
Hear
future
a motion
meeting if you'd
to
like, but-
table it. Do I hear support?
Support.
Support made, member Bernal made the motion to table. Member Moxley made the motion to support. Do I hear favor? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Yeah.
One. So, 7, I'm sorry, in favor, 1 opposed. Motion carries. We'll be in touch.
Okay, thank you.
Move on to Article 8, Master Plan Amendments. I see a representative from McKenna. Hello. Welcome. Please come forward, and if I can, I know your name, but if I can get it for the record so that we've got it.
Sure. Danielle Bouchard. I'm with McKenna Associates. Brian, should I plug in my computer
Yeah,
here?
you can.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah, yeah.
Has everybody had a chance to meet Danielle?
Yep.
Hi Danielle, nice to meet you.
She's
Yeah.
awesome. She has been, super
I
helpful
do,
building
yeah.
this master plan.
I just wanted to make sure because I sent it to you earlier, but I don't know if you had it
She
teed
gave
up
us an
somewhere
update
else.
at
I
the
didn't want to
ZBA.
mess up your system.
Yeah, she's
great.
I've been on a few committees, been fortunate to be on a few committees for the last few years with her, so.
Oh,
She cannot say the
we've been
same.
on a committee
You notice?
role.
Yes, I did not. She's not. Oh, yeah, Chris is good too.
Yeah, when he shows up, when he's sober, it's good.
Which is rare
Yeah.
for either.
Oh,
And even
Oh.
more for both.
easy.
And yet she's still ignoring them.
Can you guys see that?
We can see it.
I can't,
Well, I heard your privilege has been revoked. So.
apparently.
Just
That's-
Yeah.
You should feel
I'm
grateful.
sailing into my retirement, apparently.
And we can have Scott sit in the audience.
Support.
Tough crowd then.
So I just have a brief presentation to kind of go over the highlights of the proposed amendments to the future land use map through the master plan amendment process. And then we'll kind of go into a little bit of like what important deadlines we're working on and kind of what this timeline is going to look like. So just as a note too, that there is a corresponding memorandum that was included in your packets that kind of goes along with this presentation. So for those of you who may not be able to see the presentation, this memo covers it as well. So first slide, the overall draft future land use map. Of course, it looks a little bit different than what you guys currently have and what you're currently working with in your plan. I will go into a deeper dive into the new designations that we're looking at and what all of this means. A couple of things I want to point out here. The first of which is the new designations that we are proposing through this amendment process. Those of which being redevelopment mixed use, centennial mixed use, Cascade Village. Well, like I said, already exists, but we adjusted the boundary on that. Boulevard mixed use and Greenfield mixed use, as well as Airport Greenway. Additionally, we also added an airport safety zone area, as well as a potential utility service boundary extension. So again, I'll go into, yeah.
And maybe I'm jumping ahead here, but my first question is, are we as a planning commission simply making recommendations of what we want to see this map look like? or are we steering how this map is going to look? So I'm just gonna use
Those recommendations and steering different.
well, because we've made recommendations
Yeah.
before in prior master plans, and those recommendations were not taken.
Got it.
And so I guess that's my question is, are we steering this, or are you or the township board or township staff steering it? Because if as a group, a consensus, we decided that we wanted 28th Street to be all residential and not commercial, obviously that's, again, it's an analogy.
Or the
our-
airport greenway would be all agricultural.
Exactly.
Gave you that, if we gave you that direction, would you
Yes.
apply it?
So
That's
And I
all I'm
guess
trying to find
one
out.
quick answer to that is that the township board is the one that ultimately adopts the master.
I
plan.
understand, but what we're preparing for them as a draft proposed plan, are we doing that, or are we just simply reviewing this and saying, yes, we like it, or we don't, we'd like you to do
hired
different
McKenna.
colors?
Yeah.
So
Like
yeah.
the planning commission is the one that hired McKenna, so she works for us.
All right, then all of us need to make sure that we're giving that input to her to do this the right way this time, because last time it didn't go down that way. I understand.
Yep.
I just wanted to make sure we start on that page.
Point. Remember, Brunel?
the way,
So now that that's clarified, and thank you for that, because I was wondering the same thing. Now that what is the procedure to provide input? So right now she's presenting to us. Do we hear the entire presentation and
At the
then?
end, she's gonna ask for feedback, I suspect. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but
yes. So how I see our relationship working and how I work with all the communities I work with is you guys are the drivers of this community, right? You know the ins and outs. You guys are the boots on the ground. You're the decision makers. We use our expertise in best practices for planning, building, site design, zoning, all of those things to kind of pull together an accumulation of ideas, a consensus vision for how this future land use map or how the master plan process will go. So there will not be a situation where we sneak something in that maybe we don't think that you folks would agree with, or that even is on the same level of what the township board would be talking about. And that was also part of like that whole process that we did with the strategic plan, was to like the first step of getting everybody on the same page in the same direction. So this discussion tonight is merely just our ideas and our draft proposed ideas of where we potentially see this going, as opposed to what you have currently today. So I hope that there isn't any preconceived notions of any efforts to not be transparent through the process. And I apologize if you have felt that there was. Typically how these processes work and how we've decided the direction that we were taking with Cascade was essentially to present our ideas for your reaction, to see what you think. And because I think oftentimes it's more productive to present something and then talk through it of what this all means, rather than showing up with a blank piece of paper and say, okay, planning commission, what do you want me to do, type of thing. So if these recommendations are not along the same lines of where you guys see the township going, and if you've heard other conversations at the board level or at staff level, if our liaison to the board, our trustee, has any concerns with, that's what these discussions are for. Albeit it is a pretty tight timeline that we'll be working on. So just keep that in mind too, that we're going to have to kind of make decisions quickly. There will have to be a process where we sort of draw the line in the sand of, okay, here's our decision and we're going to roll with it. Yeah.
So I personally have any issue that you were trying to sneak something in. I was just
Okay.
more, I'm operating under the principle that
too.
you probably.
No, I thought
that you
maybe
probably have
for the
better
strategic
information.
plan that there was confusion, and I was like, no, I swear we
No,
tried
no,
really
I
hard.
agree with you.
No,
Okay.
In reviewing this, I saw a couple of things that stood out to me, and I don't know, like, now I'll just throw two out right now. So zooming in, and I don't know if it's better to do this at the end or as we go.
Brian, if it's all right, can we have her present and then
The whole thing? Okay.
give her feedback? Does anybody disagree with that?
Yeah, I personally disagree with it, but that's fine.
well, what if we let her present the map and then give her feedback on the
Like, I got a
map?
question about the map.
Right, but like, let's have her give us rationale and then dig in.
Okay.
Like,
Perfect.
yeah.
So
That's all.
maybe this slide will help. This is a comparison between what you currently have and what new draft or the proposed draft looks like. So as you can see, the 28th Street corridor, we really kind of diced that up into several different categories that have different meanings to them. And I'll get into what the nitty gritty of what those categories are. We made some adjustments to the utility service boundary area to still further promote the township's goals for farmland preservation and rural residential character on the eastern portion of the township. So our idea was to kind of dial that utility service area boundary back, especially keeping in mind too that extending any utilities over the highway or over the river would be very cumbersome and expensive and costly, and there's a lot of logistics that would go along with that. So there's those pieces. And I'll get into this a little bit more. The airport safety zone is that kind of cone-shaped hatch line that you see there. Just taking into account that the airport does have plans, the airport has a future land use plan that they have publicized, and just kind of taking into account that the airport has a master plan for expansion on opportunities and so forth. So kind of taking into account of how those safety zones play into your future land use map and future development, which is then kind of correlates with state law, aviation laws, and all of those types of things. Another piece to note here is the airport greenway idea, which I'll get into a little bit further, but basically preserving that character, that rural character and preservation of that corridor, but also keeping in mind that a lot of those properties are owned by public entities and could offer as prime opportunities for walking trails, bike trails, public spaces, parklands, and so forth, which again, I'll get into in a minute or so. So this is kind of the overall idea of sort of these spots that we selected as to kind of hone in on a little bit more. As you can see, I changed the color scheme a little bit. You know, if you guys prefer the colors that you're currently working with, that's totally fine. I just wanted to offer a little bit more color pop to kind of differentiate what is farmland preservation area, what is suburban residential area, higher density residential, and so forth, and mixed use as well. So again, the urban services boundary, we did dial it back a little bit compared to what is currently in your plan. The proposed boundary, I should also note, is that dashed line that kind of goes across the golf course and the Quiggle Lake there. That's a potential service boundary area. Something that we included on the map is that it could be included in the future, or it may not be included in the future, depending on how development goes. So for example, the purpose of the proposed revisions is to use the existing infrastructure that is already in existence under Buttrick Avenue and allow for the redevelopment of the golf course should that ever happen. So we're not going into this suggesting that the golf course ever become residential or ever become developed into something else, but golf courses are prime opportunities for redevelopment should they happen in 10, 15, 20 years. So something to think about and have the back in your mind as we move through this process is that the master plan is your vision for the next 10, 15, 20 years out into the future. So while Quail Ridge may be, doing very well today and has no plans to ever change, but that may not always be the case. Ownership changes hands, golf kind of fluctuates and the market fluctuates. So just again, something important to consider when you're going through future land use processes. Potential expansions to prevent further expansion east, except for Quiggle Lake. Again, and this could just be something that depends on the future development around the golf course. It was noted that there is a piece, trying to back up here, within the golf course that's kind of cut out as that lighter green farmland preservation area that may or may not one day be residential. So just keeping that in mind as residential, or perhaps if residential development kind of creeps further, that perhaps utility expansions to the areas surrounding Quiggle Lake for environmental purposes might be beneficial. And then, of course, as I previously alluded to, no costly extensions under 96 or across the river. So that's something that we also are proposing to dial back on, is any extensions that would cause those costly and cumbersome type of operations. So with regard to farmland preservation, so we're proposing to rename the rural residential future land use category and the ARC zoning district to rural preservation, and provide that distinction between what is farmland preservation and then what is rural preservation or rural residential. Again, this topic will be explored further once you guys see the full draft zoning plan, but something that we kind of pulled out as something to discuss further through this process. And in addition to, I would also like to note that we are understanding that the Farmland Preservation Committee is working on a lot of these items already. So in the event that something we're proposing maybe does not totally work with what they want to do, or, you know, vice versa, that our ears are open and these plans are, you know, contingent on the agreement across all facets here. So another idea we had was to create or implement a sliding scale for lot splits within the farmland preservation district. So this would essentially allow for a density of approximately 1 housing unit per 10 acres. However, you can split with 100,000 square foot minimum, but the rest of that parcel must be preserved for open space or farmland. So basically that says that there's a maximum density of 1 dwelling unit per acre for 10 acres. However, you can split your lot into a smaller lot size provided that the rest is preserved. That's kind of how that works in a nutshell.
So wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm still not catching that. So you've got 10 acres.
Yep.
You take 1 acre and you can split it into multiple lots as long as you preserve the other 9.
You can split it into one parcel that has that is a minimum of 100,000 square feet.
Okay.
And then the rest has to be preserved.
Okay, so if you have 10 acres, you can go down to 10 1-acre lots you could take 1 acre and do 100,000 as long as the other 900,000 in that acre is
That
preserved.
math doesn't work.
It would,
She's saying the minimum is a 10-acre parcel.
Correct.
And 100,000 square feet of the 10-acre parcel, you can modify, the rest would remain natural. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay, yeah. 100,000.
I was thinking it was a 1 acre, you take the 10, you
close
go
to
down.
2
Okay.
acres.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. I've clearly didn't explain
No,
that
that's
properly.
fine. I just wasn't understanding it. That's fine.
Another tool that's often used for farmland preservation purposes is prohibiting plan unit developments, site condos and plats within your farmland preservation district. So that's something that we are going to recommend through this process. And in many communities to go as far as to eliminate or prohibit any construction of private roads in their farmland preservation district. So that's something that we can explore throughout this process further. Another tool for farmland preservation is to only allow rezonings to R1, provided that it is within the utility service boundary area. So again, that kind of helps prevent that further creep into the rural residential or farmland preservation areas, provided that there's some sort of mechanism put in place to make that rezoning appropriate for higher density. Continuing township efforts to acquire land for preservation and recreation, and I'll get more into that with the Airport Greenway idea, and then again incorporating other ideas and direction from the Preservation Committee, because again we want to recognize and acknowledge that this committee has already been working and has done a lot of work on farmland preservation themes, and we want to make sure that we're incorporating all of that. So Airport Greenway, as I alluded to previously, the land east of the airport, we are proposing to designate that as farmland preservation. The public property owners, so that area designated as Airport Greenway on the northern piece of the periphery of the airport, a vast majority of those are owned by public entities. So our idea here is that having those public property owners could offer solutions or opportunities for the township to partner for any land easements or deeding any land to the township to preserve for just permanent open space preservation, or for trails, or for parkland, or something of that nature. And then consider rezoning to remove industrial and airport commerce 2 designations if property owners consent. So something to note there too. That is a zoning piece of this airport greenway idea, is eliminating or rezoning those industrial and airport commerce 2 designations. So here's just a map that kind of shows all of the public entities that own that property or those properties on the around or surrounding the airport. So the airport owns the northernmost one, the road commission owns some, Kent County owns quite a bit of land there. So again, if there was an idea or an appetite to preserve that land through the township means, whether it be for parkland, open space, or walking trails or passive recreation, whatever that might be, having those conversations would likely be a bit streamlined, given that many of those parcels are owned by public entities. With regard to the 28th Street corridor, as I mentioned previously, that the corridor, we're proposing to kind of break it up into several different future land use categories that are more closely aligned with the as-built conditions and the future vision for that those particular areas. So it's been split up into redevelopment mixed use, which is the furthest west of the 28th Street corridor. Boulevard mixed use, which are parcels that front 28th Street. And I'll get into, again, what all this stuff means in a minute. To the south there is Centennial mixed use, so that encompasses Centennial Park. And then the Cascade Village area, which is in that light purple, which sort of begins at like the D&W site and then moves further west to that Thornapple Center, which we had talked about last month. The Four Corners area, this was something that was discussed quite a bit in the current plan. We would like to add a little bit more teeth into what the Four Corners means and how that plays into the future land use planning role. This greenfield mixed use designation is fairly similar to what the current plan is, but I'll gonna kind of get into a little bit more detail. But the idea here is to incorporate light industrial, residential, and commercial and all into this squared out area. So what do these all of these new mixed use districts mean? The first of which, redevelopment mixed use, and next slide I'll show you kind of what exactly that looks like, the snippet. But that's again that west side of 28th Street. Redevelopment mixed use, the idea here is to add housing to aging office parks and other redevelopment sites to kind of re-energize those types of developments that are kind of seeing a little bit of needing a little bit of TLC, especially post-pandemic and all of these things where people are not returning to the office much as they used to be, and office parks just there isn't as much of a need for those. So incorporating those office uses and incentivizing or encouraging redevelopment into higher density residential units, which we'll get into what density that we're talking in the next slide. Centennial mixed use, so that's going to encompass the current Centennial Park. Very similar to the redevelopment mixed use, we're looking at infill and residential conversions in Centennial Park to areas where that is warranted or needed. And the reason why redevelopment mixed use and Centennial mixed use are two different designations is because their density implications are a bit different that we're proposing for both of those. So again, that's something that, why we have two different designations for those particular areas. Boulevard mixed use, the idea here is to allow mixed use in taller buildings along 28th Street. So if we think of Drury Inn, for example, that's a precedent that we use locally, not particularly that tall, but something to note that is a development that went in that is rather tall, but it still mixes in with the character of 28th Street. So
No, it doesn't. I'm sorry, but it doesn't. It looks horrible. It's an eyesore and I hate that building. Sorry.
Okay.
How do you feel about it, Al?
I disagree. I'll have more conversation on this, but
yeah,
I don't know if you know this, but Alan doesn't like that building.
yeah.
I'm catching on. Yeah. We'll get into that in a few slides and we can talk through it. The Cascade Village. So The current plan has the Cascade Village designation, dial like a bit further east, but we're proposing to move it a little bit further west. And the idea here, and I'll get into the zoning implications for what this means, but essentially to kind of split up Cascade Village into several different form-based districts, perhaps in the future. And then Greenfield mixed use is governing the build out of the Four Corners area. And again, promoting that, or I should say, permitting the mix of light industrial, residential, and commercial land uses to intermingle with one another. So redevelopment mixed use, there's a snippet here on the right-hand side of the areas planned for this. We're looking at, or we're considering approximately 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre, roughly 4 to 5 stories tall. And again, allowing that conversion of office parks into residential should the redevelopment opportunity occur. So that's the overall idea for the redevelopment mixed use designation. And the idea here also too, I want to note with mixed uses is that we want to offer a flexibility of land uses and to promote and encourage and stir redevelopment opportunities. So Cascade, like Cascade Township, you guys are in a great position to where you can be picky about development. You can tell a developer what you want done and have that done because that's your Cascade Township. You're a desirable place to be. You're a desirable place to live, to do business. So allowing that mixed use designation in these particular areas will allow for density in targeted spaces and will preserve the areas that you want to preserve. So that's something else that I wanted to note and have you folks keep in the back of your mind through this process is that the best way to preserve farmland, the best way to preserve rural character is by targeted densities to areas where it makes the most sense.
I'd also like to say the best way to preserve Cascade is not to have 4 and 5 story buildings. I'm just gonna throw that out there.
Ellen also doesn't like tall
I don't,
buildings.
yeah.
For the Centennial mixed use designation, we have noted around 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre. And I put some question marks there because that's a topic for discussion and will be probably shopped further from this point forward. I mean, all of this will be.
We just had that discussion just a few meetings ago.
Mhm. Yeah.
We restricted it to no more than 12 units. So I don't want to reopen that.
Yeah.
Okay, so 8 to 12 is still in line though with.
8 to 12 is, but you can remove the question marks.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Go
For,
through every one of these one by one and,
I'm going through it now.
yeah, dig deep.
I'm making a long list.
But you made some assumption that the question marks were about going bigger. Maybe the question mark is we had told that
Going small.
going smaller might be a possibility.
That's fine. We can go.
Oh, there you go.
I think 12 is too high.
I think we had discussed we were gonna put it at 12 because that's what our current
But we can do it.
plan was, that we would discuss it and come up with
Yeah.
with a number that was more.
Interesting that developer is not in the audience tonight. I just worthy.
He's not?
Well, he didn't stay very long after anyway, so.
I think that was when Ryan.
If he wants to build a 6-story.
Yeah, he stayed for me.
Ryan spoke.
12 units per acre, that's his problem.
Okay, we'll come back to each of these and give you some
okay,
candid feedback on what we'd like to see.
Yeah.
changed.
okay.
Little short. Small unit.
Mm-hmm.
And I also will note too that this is also recognizing that there is a Centennial Park overlay that's already existing. So just note that too, that we are aware of that and we'll workshop
the township.
through that.
Yeah, hide that one from him.
The Boulevard mixed use designation. So again, this is parcels that are fronting 28th Street. We are proposing or looking at approximately perhaps 8 to 12 dwelling units per acre, perhaps 4 to 6 story buildings. But mixed use buildings must have a commercial first floor. And again, the idea here is to offer for opportunities for flexible redevelopment. However, the emphasis is going to be more so on building and site design rather than what that building is particularly used for. So that's where the mixed use kind of comes into play, where perhaps commercial along with residential makes sense. Perhaps it's office and residential, perhaps it's office and commercial, you can intermingle those things. But the idea here is that we want to start spurring and encouraging redevelopment off of 28th Street into buildings that we want into buildings that reflect how the township wants them to look. With regard to Cascade Village, architectural standards for a form-based code, we're proposing with the building types code to kind of separate Cascade Village into a form-based standards that are appropriate for that particular area. So partially the reason for proposing to extend the Cascade Village area a bit further west is to essentially offer a type of transition from the 28th Street corridor down to your village area. So with the current architecture and infrastructure off of 28th Street, it doesn't necessarily offer for a great transition into into the area that you would like to become the village in the future. So the idea here again is to offer that high quality building and site design as you go from frequently traveled, high intensity, auto-oriented uses down to your walkable, bikeable, commercial, residential, village type uses. Thornapple Center redevelopment. Again, this is something that we've talked about last month, and I've been very conscious of trying to deprogram myself from Thornapple Plaza to Thornapple Center after that conversation. So again, redevelopment, infill development, all of those types of things that are going to be the emphasis and the focus of these mixed use categories. Incorporating the upper village. So when I refer to the upper village, that's going to be the area that we're here now, where the library has their expansion plans and the Friendship Park and how all of those items tie into down the hill where you're going to have your core village type of architectural design. And then again, transition into 28th Street. Greenfield mixed use, approximately looking at 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre, perhaps around 2 to 4 story buildings, and incorporating light industrial as permitted uses where appropriate. And planned unit development. So this is a piece that we are recognizing can be a bit of a hoop into redevelopment efforts. So because there are a lot of PUDs that exist along 28th Street, if the township were to embark on a rezoning process or working with private property owners for redevelopment or infill development, this will likely require quite a bit of working through these PUD agreements that exist or perhaps were done 30 years ago. So we recognize these things, and our approach or our recommendation or proposal here is to start by prioritizing a list of the PUDs that are the most important to least important for approaching property owners for redevelopment or infill development purposes. So that's just something to note too, that there are going to be prime redevelopment opportunities or parcels that the township may want to target as higher priorities for new types of redevelopment processes. So that's something that will kind of assist through this process, through the master plan amendment process with, is kind of helping to come up with what that priority list might look like. All right. Now.
So first of
Go
all,
ahead. It sounded like you weren't done, so go ahead.
No, I was going to go back to the slide where
Are you done with the,
we're,
are you going any, are you advancing beyond that?
that was the end.
Let's go to slide 1 and we're gonna go through each slide and give you feedback. Is that all right?
That is quite all right.
Does that work for everybody? Yeah.
also, can we also get a copy of this afterwards to look at more?
That's a reasonable request.
Mhm.
Perhaps after she makes all the wonderful changes we're about to give her.
Sure.
So
Should I give you time to sharpen the pitchforks or?
no,
I'm
Danielle,
kidding.
Danielle, you're,
No, I did that while you
I'm
were
kidding.
talking.
Danielle, you are our partner on this.
I think he does need to sharpen it.
Yeah.
He's going to pitch first. He's moved on to bricks.
All seriousness, she works
I know.
for us.
I know.
Like we gave her the job to bring us a draft. Now it's time to really iterate.
Yeah.
That's what we're gonna do tonight. We're
Oh,
gonna.
no, I'm not-
we're gonna
yeah,
get
not-
tight, right? And,
Because
no
there's
wonder we
all this
tabled
on the
everything.
line.
There's a lot of iteration that's gonna happen from trustee Timmy. And, we're gonna get deep and, when we walk out of here, we're gonna be very happy with what, we
Great.
have. So,
I have a long list.
Right.
yes, Danielle has done a
I'm-
fantastic job of doing what we
Yes.
asked her to do. And
Thank you.
so, yes, thank you.
I'm ready
Let's go.
for it. Should we go like,
No,
I don't know, Chairman,
Let's
it's
go-
your
let's go
call.
to the first formal slide. We can come back to
that's
that.
this one, isn't it?
You want to see the,
Oh, there
Where
we
she lists.
That's, I like that one right there.
You want to start here?
Well, no, I like it. Go to the very first slide. Like,
Go to the
let's
very
start-
first slide.
Let's go right to right from the beginning.
Yeah, you can't really see because it's not,
That's what I'm saying.
Zoomed in.
Whether we're both,
which,
or do we want to start with the map?
I would first go from the first slide if we can pick something out
Yeah.
here. So on this first slide, the first thing that sticks out to me is farmland preservation. As part of the Farmland Preservation Committee, first of all, we haven't done as much work as you've heard yet, but we hope to get there.
oh,
I don't want to overdo what we've done. But farmland preservation has a connotation that is not what we've actually achieved. You have a bullet later on that we want to incentivize and maybe actually have farmland preservation.
mhm.
So I'm just wondering if there's a way we can change that. I like the rural preservation and I like the parallelism, so I understand by changing the one, we have to change the other, but as shown here, that is not preserved farmland.
Well, this says future land use though, too. I mean, this is more of a goal than it is
Current.
current. So-
Okay.
This is the
That's
current.
fair. That's fair. Okay, perfect. All right, he's solved my problem already. I like it.
Yep.
Next question is, I've noticed that previously there was a kind of what we kind of term a buffer zone.
Mhm.
So there was a different zoning around the farmland preservation. Can you comment on why that's not there anymore?
There was a buffer zone?
Do you
Well,
mean,
it's kind of back to the, so we have remember the hashed?
Well, it was an
Sits
overlay. The
inside- it's an
farmland,
overlay.
the farmland
Okay.
preservation is actually an overlay, like the centennial
No,
overlay.
Remember, we
The
said it's
farmland
not an
preservation is
overlay.
Overlay that's
It's its
smaller
own- it's
than
its own
the.
zoning district that stands on its own. It's not an overlay of the arc. It is its own zoning district.
isn't that AR?
Okay. I
So
thought.
there's the
that-
ARC and the farmland. So
Okay,
the Centennial Park is the only overlay that we have, not with the new
Alright.
airport ones, but
Okay,
is it?
sorry, I misspoke.
and I vaguely remember that, but so now back to that. So it's not an overlay, but it's the hash. So it looks like an overlay,
Yeah,
but it's
Right,
not
it's
really.
it's mapped, yeah, it's mapped.
But
on the
it's
screen.
a subset within inside what is currently shaded as farmland preservation. So if you do a subtractive process between the overlay and this light green farmland preservation, we had a buffer zone.
Can we just go to the next slide so we can see what he's talking about? I understand the desire to stay on the first slide, but the second slide, I think, shows it better. Doesn't it?
So the
It shows
master, the
existing-
master plan doesn't have the same buffer that you're talking about, the zoning districts. The zoning districts have that kind of ARC acts as a buffer. The master plan that's currently shown kind of has the farmland butting up against what our current one is suburban residential.
Mhm.
Right, so this is the.
Right. And then this is the ARC on each side. Okay.
Same thing.
Okay, yeah, no,
Okay.
all right, so you can't really see it on the map, but if you zoom in, you've got a sliver, it's the Tuffy shop, and I think what's that other office building behind the Tuffy shop? Is it an accounting building or?
Oh, the old doctor's building?
Yeah,
Which is, I think it's slated to be raised any day now.
yeah, but
Maybe
you
not.
don't have that as part of the village. And that should be
Mm.
part of the village. And then,
That was an oversight on my part.
okay, and then Ryan brought up a good point. Should, those houses that are across the street
You can
from Tassel Park, should we make those properties part of the village too? Just in the event that if they want to sell, we can develop that into, restaurants or shops or whatever.
Anybody have an objection to that? It makes good sense. Sounds like it makes good sense to me. Does anybody have an objection to making the houses across from Tassel Park part of the village?
I don't see a downside to that.
I don't either.
I like that, but I question the Tuffy part, wouldn't that not be village? It would be the green, it would be community.
Village.
No, be
would go
part
all
of the
way to
village.
water.
I mean, you
The
could,
park is extending into that, no?
It doesn't matter. It should still be part of the village.
Yeah, but it may not for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
With the way the lease is
Make
set
it village now and then we can always convert it to the park if we have to.
Well, you can have a park in the village.
Yeah.
There's no reason why it can't be part of
I was
it.
just trying to match the shading that's immediately.
You see that little sliver I'm talking about? Yeah.
So I'm clear,
Can't see it.
the homes located, this would be north of Tassel Park.
on 28th
Well,
or on.
maybe.
Yes.
What we need to do is give her some addresses.
Yeah, if you,
so she knows exactly
there's no
what
way to
parcels we're
zoom, but
talking.
and there's, so I would go all the way to the bend.
Just go all the way
So-
to Thornhills. I mean.
So you,
It's fine,
Not
too.
that many houses.
No, I mean, yeah.
well, I don't know that I would go that far.
Because
I would
we're
go
saying
as-
Thornhills is the village now. Because we're saying this is the village. That's all I'm saying. Like it's.
I hear what you're saying.
Okay, so while he's pondering addresses, I'll go the reverse way since you've mentioned Thornhills. I agree with John was my like Roland, with both of his, but I question now. What is the magic? We've gone one parcel west of Thornhills. Why does the village go that far?
Because the fire station's there.
Okay, so it's dictated by the fire station?
Yeah.
For Danielle, you want
I
to speak a
think
little
I
bit to that?
suspect-
It was to kind of
That's a
get
fair
that
answer.
new
Well, also
district
that
as a way to
D&W
transition.
property
One parcel there.
is technically would be west of Thornhills if Thornhills continue
Intercepted,
on.
yeah.
Mhm.
But what's the magic of D&W? Why wouldn't you say Walmart then? Like, I'm just wondering why.
yeah.
Because to me, the D&W strip mall loses the charm of a village. Are we trying, like, what is the goal? To
So-
create charm? Why wouldn't that be corridor?
As,
I would just go to.
Can Danielle speak to that? She has some background of why it
Yeah.
extends that far.
so
You can do it on
The
the
i-
screen.
the
you
idea
can't.
there
It doesn't work.
is if the area is designated as Cascade Village, that doesn't necessarily mean that that will translate exactly to all of that being the same zoning district. So our proposal is to expand the Cascade Village designation, but when you come down to your zoning ordinance amendments that are typically the natural next step to your master plan update, is to split up that Cascade Village into different zoning districts themselves. So because each of those pieces are going to have different needs. So when expanding it a little bit further west will allow for infill development along that D&W strip mall area and for redevelopment ideas or opportunities. But the idea there is that then high quality and high building site design standards would then be triggered. Because there will be more robust zoning code that goes along with anything designated as Cascade Village. But depending on the location within Cascade Village, that architectural standard will look different. Does that help explain it a little bit better?
I think so, yeah. So if I could maybe re-say it back what I thought I heard.
Mhm.
It gives us a bigger footprint to make something look a little more uniform. rather than
Exactly
just having
that.
A little tiny.
Yep. And so that way you have your high density or your highly trafficked 28th Street corridor, a lot of auto-oriented buildings, a lot of buildings that are set back with front parking, all of those things that by extending the Cascade Village future land use designation and by implementing a building types code, or let's just say high architectural standards within that district, then you can start to build a transition from the 28th Street suburban corridor to your village downtown. But those buildings will look different from your downtown versus that area.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Would it be possible to have her throw a quick sketch that I made on my screen up so you guys could see it?
I don't see why not. I don't know how she does it.
Do you know which button she would have to push up there to?
I don't know if we can share your specific screen, Scott.
Okay, well,
I think it's the.
then I'll say this. Here's my concern with what our chairman said a moment ago about extending the village area all the way down the street. And that is, I think there's gonna be a lot of people that don't wanna see the potential for PUDs or commercial in that corridor.
And Scott, is that on Thornapple River Drive?
Yes. And so I would say the village should be in line approximately with where the dam is or the end of Tassel Park.
Yeah, which is.
So I would draw a line
there.
that leaves about, depending on how you count, I think there's one house that I would leave out of it that's on the curve. So that you're just doing the ones immediately across from the park, starting with 2965 Thornapple River Drive, which and working your way towards the gathering place. That's how I would do it if it were me. And that encompasses the area that individual was talking about, as well as an additional property, I believe.
I don't have a strong feeling on this, so I support that.
That's my,
Any
that's my
concerns with it?
No, that's what I was gonna say, just those 6 properties right there. And
Ryan?
it's one more than probably
Ryan.
Scott wants.
I would be very supportive. I like that, but I then think I question then I like parallelism, and I like what kind of Ada did on the opposite side. So what I guess I'd say east of Cascade Road, it's kind of a weird transition there. But again, we have the village extending to the river as opposed to being shaded, I would say like the forest green to denote community. Do we really 10 years from now, are we wanting to have village sales on the river, or is our goal to kind of have it again, like the opposite side of the river? We've got Tassel on the opposite side as business. Do we want community on the opposite side? It just seems like if we have an opportunity here to shade this, I would do exactly what Scott did, and I'd mirror it across Cascade to the other side.
so you're saying you'd go all the way down to Peace Street?
No.
Yes, on the river side of Thornapple to P Street, yes.
Okay.
So you go all the way down to here? That's what you're saying?
You would have the village go basically from that house at 2965 Thornapple River down to the river, essentially in line with the dam, and then work its way north to Peace
Okay,
Street.
so you take those last 2.
Yeah, so we would take,
Peace Street. You know, the gravel road where the bike path is always covered with stone? It's kind of a.
yeah, I guess if you zoom in, she's gone 2 properties past there for some reason.
That was a joke for people on the pathway committee, sorry.
Properties.
Yes, I'd say P Street. I'm not sure why this is going 2 properties past there. Yes.
So the 6 properties across from Tassel Park, you would bring them into the village. Would you change their zoning from current? They still be R1?
I would only bring 5 into the village for me, but I
would
wouldn't
their-
change
would
their zoning.
Stay R1 or would they go commercial?
No, I would leave the zoning exactly how it is. I'm just saying that in the future, if they wanted to make a change, they'd
It's
be.
not.
It allows the ability to rezone in
No,
the future if someone
this one
comes
out.
with
Okay.
a. Well, it's actually-
So
And I would say something that it has to go in a
6th one is.
phased approach if it goes commercial, which means that first property right there on the parking lot of the first of the 5 properties has to go first, and the second one has to go second, because you can't have a commercial one right in the middle of 2.
Well, there's interest right now by developers to pick that all up,
Yeah,
Sure.
well, I mean,
including the first house and the vacant lots by it.
and again, as long as they're gonna do it, I mean, I'd like to see restaurants there, you know?
Don't know
We
what
don't
you
get to
get.
pick what goes there unless we buy it, so.
how many of them are already? So this is.
And that would be a 1-story restaurant.
What were you saying about the building at the corner next to the park on the map?
Oh, so right here on the map, Brian, can you pull up our
Really too bad the
agenda on
technology
this
doesn't
computer
work.
at all?
Pull up what?
Can you pull up our agenda? Cause you can blow up the map and you can see it much easier.
This doesn't do much for
Cause
anyone.
that is purple on this map, right?
It's not, there's a little sliver right there between Tassel Park.
I have a zoom
And
in of that
Cascade Road.
area on here.
Oh, yeah, perfect, right there. So that little sliver
Oh,
right there
okay.
between Tassel Park and
In
Cascade
the other
Road.
picture, it looked purple to me.
Yeah.
So I see what you mean.
Yeah, that's the Tuppy shop.
Yeah. Who owns that now?
We do.
Yeah, and then there's another office building behind it, but
That's part of the Tassel Park property,
What I was
all the way to the water.
what I was saying is.
That's part of Tassel Park. We own both those properties.
Okay, so that's gonna be merged into Tassel Park at some point.
But see, if you look at, that's
Great.
deceiving, because if you look at that aerial photo, there's 2 residences across the street from that. And that's why I wasn't including.
Oh, great.
I could do just the
Right
5.
there.
That's
Okay,
close.
all right.
I mean, that's.
So are we excluding or including the southernmost piece?
I think
Excluding.
we're starting at 2965 Thornapple River Drive and working our way toward Cascade Road.
So just those 5.
Okay.
And we want to include Tassel Park as
Yep.
well as Tuffy and the doctor's office as part of the village as
Yep.
well, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And I should also note too that it gets a little bit confusing, but the public, semi-public designation, those are like parks, township owned properties, golf course, so forth. But the underlying zoning district can be Cascade Village or it can be suburban residential or whatever. Just to note that public, semi-public uses, the way that they're designated differently is because they're government buildings essentially, and they can be appropriate in any zoning district in many cases.
So I think I get that, but I'm still, so you got those, you just, where's the, I call it a park, where's the piece of property that we own?
This is Tassel Park.
On the other side, we own a piece of property.
Oh, right here. These two.
So what's the address?
2800
So-
Thornapple Drive.
When does that become part of the park? Or when?
Hold on, I've shifted gear.
Whoa,
2800
way far away from that.
2800 Thornapple River Drive, that is shaded purple on here, so is the thought that we would lease that to someone like we are Tuffy, or should that be green at least?
I don't think it's a park, so it wouldn't be green yet. It would be just land that the township owns. That'd be my opinion.
Okay.
I think it's shaded as a village. She has it, I would say, in the correct shading.
Perfect.
But I'm just one opinion of 7.
Hey, guys, in the interest of time, could we go to
The next
where
slide.
she has bullet points and we can fix
Sure.
those? Because I think
Okay.
that we can get to quickly.
While we're on that map, can I just bring up a few more, because it might be easier to visualize there than somewhere else?
Can we do the bullet points? I mean, yeah, we can.
Okay,
I just think a lot of these bullet points we can fix quick
okay,
and then circle back to them and fix what we have left.
all right, I'll try to cross things off as we get to.
So,
Well, and she can make adjustments and email them out and we can.
yeah,
Yeah, and the map.
Can you go back to
I
the,
think we got probably
Presentation.
80% of that.
purpose of proposed revisions.
oh, you can hit. your
This is
button.
for the urban
It's on the
services.
screen,
Do we need
right?
this?
I don't, does anybody have any concerns with this one?
I can't see it, I'm sorry.
That's all right, we're getting.
The urban services boundary.
Yes, I do have
Go ahead.
well, when you say urban services, I'm assuming, again, I can't see it on the map, but, that's like a utility service
Yeah.
boundary, right? Okay, so my concern there is, I can explain it on the map, but my concern with including that area around Quiggle Lake is I think I see us moving this utility service boundary further and further away. We don't even have these utilities at the Thornapple River.
Mhm.
So to me, it seems a bit artificial to throw the goal that far out when we can't even meet the current needs closer in. My other concern is I don't like the idea of having it include the area on the east side of the airport that we just said we wanted to remain more of a rural character. I feel that that is sending mixed signals if we're extending that utility service boundary into that area.
I feel like you're working against us on some of this stuff.
Yeah, so no utilities out in the Greenway area, the
Okay.
airport Greenway.
I think I like it dialed back closer to Buttrick and maybe not, at least this time, south of 96. And other than where it already exists.
Anybody have a concern with that?
Can she pull that map back up again so we can see?
That's what I'm saying.
That's real helpful.
Because right now, I mean, I understand why you drew it where you drew it. And it's just, I think we're trying to, I'd like to see us get closer to the boundary before we extend it out further. If that makes sense. I mean, we
hear you.
have elementary schools and homes right in close that are not being serviced by the utilities. So to add another mile of utility to the east seems like
Overreach.
an overreach.
Okay.
But I'm confused. In her defense, she shrunk it everywhere except for around Quiggle. We're just wanting
Did
her
you-
to shrink it more. If you go to existing versus proposed, she's already shrunk it everywhere, haven't you, except for Quiggle?
Anything below 96 was removed out of the boundary.
Yeah, so if you look-
As well as there's like a jet out on the east
Everything
side
she's
there.
done is shrinking.
And that's not to say that it can't shrink more.
The-
Right, so I think what you're saying is you want
The
to shrink more.
southwest corner, is where I feel it needs to shrink.
Okay.
A bit more, closer in line with 48th Street. I know there's people that want to see it extended in that area, But that's kind of a double-edged sword, and I think we need to have it extend down Cascade Road before we consider extending it down Cherry. I'm gonna put it that way.
We don't even have service in here.
Right,
So-
none of that area, yeah, none of the area between the river and Buttrick, a lot of that doesn't, really, there's virtually no existing sewer east of the river. Very,
So,
very little.
Do we want to take it further
Or what?
to stop at Buttrick?
Yeah, so,
Is that what I'm hearing?
so can I try something? So right now, on the, what map you have up, which you can't see.
Actually, yeah.
So where you've got it on Buttrick, next to Autumn Woods,
Yeah.
if she brought that straight down Buttrick all the way down to 96 and ended at 96, would you be happy?
Yeah, if she squares it off at 96 and doesn't continue to the bottom of the map following the river as she does. If she wants to follow the river, then she needs to stay east of Thorn Apple River Drive.
So essentially what we're looking at is more or less a border using the highways, the northern half of the township, more or less,
Yeah.
and excluding basically anything outside anything, let's see, west of
Straight
M6,
line.
anything south of 96 is done. Or is not included, I should say.
I think is that not what we had talked about
It
before on
is.
the planning commission?
It is.
I'm just trying to,
Yep, no, it is. So.
I'm not trying to change anything. I'm just
No,
trying
no,
to
I
be
think that's,
consistent.
no, that's what we talked about. So I mean, Danielle, do you feel comfortable?
Yeah,
adjusting that?
Consistent.
I think I got it.
Okay, let's go to the next slide 5, make sure there's nothing else pending. Trustee Nordic?
Well, you're kind of penciling Quail Ridge Golf Course in for housing. I think it'd be nice to pencil it in for a park.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think we at least need to preserve that option for that as well.
There's your open
Okay.
farmland or your open space plus parks, and let's not put everything as housing.
So Buttrick right down to 96 and follow 96 west.
Or a
Kind of what
combination
you're
of,
getting at, Scott.
or a combination of.
Buttrick down to 96, then follow 96.
I don't like the idea.
Stay north of
It's
96.
actually 48th Street, really, because
I don't like Quail Ridge going to
I mean, or
residential. I'd
40,
rather
yes,
go to a
96,
park, go to
48th Street,
art,
somewhere
go
in
to-
there. Draw the line.
Yeah, I don't like the idea.
Kent County.
Okay.
A Kent County Park.
Yeah, no residential on Quail Ridge.
So then what do you guys think of the idea?
Replacing it with a big residential. I said I would rather that stay as one big lot. Maybe it's a park, maybe it's.
Well, I had that down as a concern because here's my concern and my question, I guess, if you prohibit, and this is maybe jumping slightly ahead, but it's specific to this Quiggle Lake in the golf course. If you prohibit PUDs in the farmland preservation area and Quiggle Ridge is a PUD, I believe.
Mhm.
Okay, and now it has to be, or Quail Ridge, excuse me, and now it has to be redeveloped down the road. Are we gonna, I'm just wondering how that conversation will work out, because I can see it going a couple different ways. One, well, it's an existing PUD, so we should be allowed to modify it as a new PUD.
That's not in the farmland preservation though, as currently shown. It's in a separate designation.
Okay, so it would not be part of that anti-PUD.
Correct.
It's in rural preservation.
When I asked Kent County, where's our park? Cascade Township doesn't have one. He
Right.
said, what area do you have designated?
Oh,
That could be it.
That would be it.
So
we have a few areas. I could make a list for you.
because the township doesn't own this property and it may or may not become township owned at some point throughout the duration of this plan. What I'm wondering, maybe if it would be appropriate to designate that as park target area or something of that of nature, rather than saying public, semi-public, because the township does not currently own this
Park
property.
targets sounds good to me. Any concerns with that?
I think it should be residential as an option too. I mean, I can see that as and I'm not talking like, I'm talking like nice home, like Manchester Hills, that's a great place to develop large homes that you can put in there and.
So park target and residential. Anybody have a concern with that?
No.
Okay, there it is.
Yeah, I offer one other suggestion. Between the Grand River and Grand River Avenue out by Peace Park and Bolt Avenue, that whole area, I'd like to see that made into a Kent County park. I mean, you can't really build anything in there because it floods periodically. And there's like 20 cows that use that land. That's
that was one of the items I had on my list, not necessarily to that, but just adjacent to that is McGraw Park. And I have brought up, I don't know how many times, but that is not shaded on the map as a park. And it is a Cascade Township Park. It should be on there.
I remember we talked about this at the strategic plan and we
Yes.
changed it.
It's not on these
On there.
maps. It
Okay.
still does not show up as a park. It's like a lost park.
This area along the river is just beautiful. And
Yeah.
if we can make that into a Kent County park, I think it'd
It
be.
should
Did
be
it get
shaded
dry
on
enough
that.
that you could walk on it?
That's where the
Cows walk
public
on it
school is
now.
going.
Don't walk there in April
That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that area's been on the township's radar for a while, and I think the county's, well, it's nice, there's only actually 3 property owners in that entire stretch. So it would be easier area to potentially look at in the future for park
Yeah.
space.
It's our next.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat that location?
though. It's between Grand River Avenue
Okay.
and the Grand River.
East
near
of McGraw
Bolt.
Park.
And it's just across from Peace Park.
It's essentially all the land east of McGraw Park to the township line.
Okay.
So you're proposing that be shaded as, what do we call it, future parkies?
Park target.
Park target.
First, we should shade the existing park and then maybe shade future park next to it as.
So I would like to revisit, so if we are going to, since we're gonna have more of this park target, I would like to revisit Mr. Rowland's. It seemed like everyone was anti-development and he mentioned it, and we all went, sure, we can do slash. If we're gonna have target park / development, it wouldn't now work where you're at. So I would say if you're gonna shade your target park, Quail Ridge is target park, not target park / residential. Anybody? Sorry, Mr. Rowland.
No, I don't like that.
So the way that I see the park target area kind of working is that the future land, like you would have almost like your underlying zoning or future land use that you would be planning for. However, you would say in your master plan that this is generally like it might be along the property line exactly, or it might be like a bubble or something that says park target area with associated narrative that notes that, residential of X density might be appropriate here, but the township is going to prioritize incorporating this land into the township park system.
Rather than shading maps,
Is the only
Does it-
people that are gonna do a
Does-
park is us.
does it make sense
Yeah,
to
that-
just simply say that the township is interested in expanding park opportunities at waterfront properties?
I think that's appropriate and makes sense.
Or is that
But if
not
that's-
the direction we want to go?
No, I think that makes
That'd
sense.
look great. Yeah.
Say it one more time.
Okay, so rather than, if I'm hearing correctly, rather than noting potential park
I-
areas, that will just be more of a vague statement within the master plan that states the township wants to do that.
If I may, member Engel has some experience in land conservancy. How would you word this, or how would you write this to get the township the maximum benefit of trying to attract a county park or something, so we don't tie our hands?
I can let Joe speak too, but I do think that more you call out as like a bubble, or a circle on the map showing potential acquisition. So it still has its underlying future land use designation, but that's how you call it out with that. You circle the property, put a little red circle on, say, this is potential future. So it does kind of have both then.
Yeah, but would
Here
you rather
goes.
have a county park, or would you rather have $50 million homes with all that additional tax revenue? Right, that we can then do all kinds of other things.
Depends on where it is.
Yeah, the park.
It really is
Really?
hard.
Take the park,
Take the park.
yes, especially on the river.
How many parks do we need in Cascade?
If half the township was parks. More than we have, because the values of all the current houses would go up.
As long as we get a couple more really tall hotels, I could go on.
Right.
Where all those people.
We'll find a spot for your McMansions, don't worry.
Yeah, I need a couple muffler shops too.
Let's come back to this one. I wanna get to, there we go.
Okay, so now we're on 7.
Yeah.
So my question on this one is, have we, and this question is directed towards Brian, have we incorporated in this drawing everything that the airport has asked us to incorporate related to their master plans?
Looks
And
like all the runways.
So they really haven't given specifics on what should or should not be incorporated. And there's been brief conversations with legal counsel and Danielle, they have some experience with incorporating airport plans in
Okay.
master plans. So
Cause I know there were some concerns that we had missed some things in the last go around or two. And so I want to make sure that we are addressing all of their concerns, related to what the law requires
Well, I
us
think,
to
yeah, I
do.
think, right, there's a difference between their concerns and what the law
Right.
requires us
That's
to
what I'm
do.
saying, with what the law
So, yeah.
requires.
So
us to
we'll
do.
work with, again, McKenna has a little experience with that, and we'll probably double check with Foster Swift saying, hey, do you believe this meets the
Okay.
requirements of the, planning?
I
and
do
aid
believe
plan?
we're missing one though. I do believe a request from their engineer was that we acknowledge the future runway, and I don't think this has the airport safety zone for the new north runway.
Can you take that into account and just come
It-
back to us on it? I don't want to spend.
It
lots of time
does.
on this.
May.
I believe,
It has
Isn't that
it
right
has
here?
the private runway currently, not the.
Yeah, that's the private roadway on there.
okay.
Are these safety zones one that we drew or were those provided by the airport?
So the airport has drawings that I approximated into this map. So that's why I put approx in there, because it's not actually their GIS data that I put onto this map.
Does it
But I
make,
referenced it as I drew it.
does it make sense at some point that we are happy with the map? We show them a draft and ask them for comments on it?
They'll receive as part of the required mail that
Right.
goes out.
Okay.
They'll receive one.
Okay.
Any other concerns on this one?
Mm.
All right, next slide. 28th Street corridor.
Oh, do you want to go to the bullets? Okay,
Yes.
let's start here.
Okay. All right.
Oh,
I have a,
yes.
I have a big issue with the 4 to 5 story buildings. I don't think we should have anything taller than 3, but I'm. open.
100% agree.
I thought-
100% agree.
And I might even consider cutting that to 2.
The reason I say 3 is you can kind of get a little creative, like, because they're gonna come in front of us and we can say, no, that looks like shit, and you're not doing it, right?
Yeah.
So,
Cause I think downtown Ada looks crappy now that they have all those
Too big.
3-story. Yeah, it's horrible.
Too dense.
way too
Horrible.
dense.
Still shady.
And again, remember, this area here is different than downtown Ada, where it's tucked away, it's next to the highway. And so this is where, if you're gonna have something higher, if that's 3 stories,
Yeah.
this would be where you'd have something slightly taller.
Well, our
2 to 3,
current
please.
I
zoning,
think 2 to 3 is tall.
yeah.
2 to 3 is tall.
Tall enough.
All enough.
How tall? So this includes Hotel Avenue. What are, I don't even know. What's the height of the current hotels back on Hotel Avenue? Not counting Drury.
Let's.
They've got to be at least 5.
They're not. I mean, you've got the hot,
No more.
the Marriott one back by is only a single story. You've got Drury, which is what, that 6 stories, 7 stories, something
Somewhere
like
in
that.
They were in the highway service.
Red
district,
Roof Inn
I
is
think,
2.
Allowed higher
Yes.
roof lines.
But there's a
And this
few
is-
back.
I think
in there.
Spring
On
Hill.
the backside,
I can
where
feel
Myers
that.
is, that's only a 2-story.
No, there's a few sort of tucked away behind where Target is.
Yeah, but that's only a 1-story. That does the Spring Hill Suites or whatever.
Spring Hill's at least.
That's
4.
at least a 3.
Is it really that high?
Yeah, 3 or 4. Yeah.
Gosh.
We put all.
So yeah, we can do a little inventory of existing ones and
Yeah, but
see what that,
that's
see
fine.
what
This
it
is
looks like.
future. This is
Yep.
future. Who
Yep.
cares about that?
Is Dreary Hotel the tallest building in?
It is,
Cascade?
and we did that. The previous planning commission, I don't think anybody, were you on that when that
Yeah.
happened?
Yeah, we did that because it was in the highway service district. The highway service district specifically states that buildings can be, I think, a height of, I want to say 45 feet or something. Plus the parapet wall above it.
And we got the Cascade Township sign out of it.
That's right.
In a very appropriate place.
You guys are awesome
Oh.
negotiators.
I wasn't here. I want to be on record.
But if we want to limit height, then we need to change that part of the zoning to say that, because I believe it currently states that you can have higher heights next to the highway, which is why those hotels are tall.
And remember, they're giving us suggested zoning
Right.
amendments that come out of this.
And then I also related to this slide, number 12. I know that numerous times in front of the planning commission, it was brought up that there was a lot of effort to try and get Star to come all the way through to 28th Street, because currently Star and what is that? I want to say Northern Industrial Drive or Horizon, they don't intersect, and you end up in this private meandering loop through the office park that you have pictured here. And there was a concerted effort with those property owners to create a assessment district at one time to connect those roads so that there'd actually be a public road through to Patterson.
Okay.
And so I think that we should highlight that that is a goal. So if this area is redeveloped, that getting closer to having those roads connect is a benefit. Is it wrong to bring that up, Brian, or?
No, we
Are you
would
a little
need some,
familiar with that, aren't you?
that was, yeah, before my time, but we would need some improved access to this area before you start adding more.
Want this as residential? I'm of the mind to leave it exactly as it is. Do we want more higher density apartment complexes and
No.
hotels
I don't
in
want to see that.
Cascade?
No.
I don't want to see that.
But I think I think she's got to step up here, I think a little bit. I think we're missing the point. This is, as I read it and as I thought I heard, what I thought I heard is that this is starting to become blight. This is post-pandemic. This area is, at some point, is this just going to be an abandoned eyesore? Are we going to allow something here? I think this is what happens in 10 years as this starts to decay. My argument would be, okay, so no more hotels. But what about a 4-story Union? What's the Union High School downtown where they've turned it into like beautiful condos? They're like $700,000 a piece. You wouldn't do like some nice condos here for retirement condos?
Are they gonna
Like,
tear down the blight?
So that is
Yes.
that's the
That-
worry
that-
about office buildings is right.
I would rather see
Maybe
I would rather see a
vacant.
4-story retirement community here than in Centennial Park. Cause this is, I'm gonna steal your term. What is this? The highway corridor district? What is this?
Yeah, expressway service.
Expressway service. I don't even know the term. Okay.
Does it matter that it says 28th Street in the wrong spot on this map?
It's 28th Street
Well,
Court.
if you're trying to get somewhere.
What did they do to Union High School?
It's 28th Street Court.
It's just condos now.
It's condos.
So-
If you're an engineer, you should go tour it. It's mind numbing the vision someone had. They sliced that thing into so many small pieces, but it's a whole other story.
To that point, though, I think that brings up an excellent theme to keep in the back of your minds through this process, that this is, a lot of these office parks are aging. They are not as relevant as they were 30, 40 years ago when they were built. I would urge you to consider the idea of what is the highest and best use for these properties as they stand today and 20 years into the future.
A park,
Would you rather,
right? I mean, that's what we need. We need tons of parks here. Let's do a park.
but to that point though,
course.
and I will reiterate myself again through this process and maybe even push back a little bit that
Please.
the best way to preserve rural character and farmland preservation is by density targeted to appropriate areas. Having density targeted to directly adjacent to 28th Street, sandwiched between a highway, that's the best place to put it, right? Because you don't want to eat up your farmland. You don't want to expand out into, 30, 300 unit neighborhoods into your farmland preservation areas. So I just, and with Cascade's demographic of having older folks who maybe are looking to age in place, who have children who are moving out of the home, that's something to think about too, that where are we going to put all these folks like that are perhaps being displaced by their homes that are too large for them to live in.
Right there
So
on slide
just something
12.
to keep in your mind as we move through this process. I don't want to sway one way or the other, but when we're talking about land use planning and and planning for the highest and best use of each property in the township, that's our goal.
Chairman, may I?
Yeah, of course.
I like what you said, but I would offer a more succinct. The best way to preserve farmland is to ensure all new development is redevelopment. If we allow these places to just decay and we have lax standards, it's just going to be urban sprawl everywhere. Force them to redevelop this so they can't go elsewhere.
And that's fine, but here's the thing, Cascade isn't an apartment mecca, right? That's downtown Grand Rapids.
What else will go here?
We're not careful.
But we don't want that here. There's a reason Cascade is what it is, right? Because we've kept that out and adding 4 and 5 story redevelopment apartments, or that's not. Cascade's not going to be what Cascade is 10 years from now if you allow that.
I hear you and I respectfully disagree. Here's my counter to that. I would like to think I'm one of the biggest tree huggers on this group, and I voted against Centennial. But this is right on expressway off ramps and on ramps. They're not filling our streets with traffic. They're zip on, zip off. It's going to happen somewhere. And I don't see anybody removing all this asphalt and buildings.
It can happen somewhere.
Let's
It
hear
can
from-
happen in
let's hear from
Kentwood.
Trustee Norwood.
It could happen in Kentwood.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm not opposed to 68 units per acre 2 to 3 story buildings.
Hmm.
You tear down one of these old office buildings and do that, that's fine.
Mhm.
But I don't want these 15, 20 units an acre and 6 story buildings. I'm not into that. I'm not into the apartments. I'm good with condos.
Well,
I don't want an apartment park. I'd rather have the decaying office park.
I think we are trying to be very specific and
Mhm.
probably a lot of the specifics, like we don't want hotels in a certain area, are things that we need to address. And correct me if I'm wrong, but at the zoning ordinance level, not so much at the future land use map. Because, the word apartment is different than condo, but,
In the interest of time, are we good with 6 to 8 dwelling units per acre, 2 to 3 story buildings, allow conversion of office parks into residential?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Probably should have
no,
done
we
that.
just approved up to 12.
Can I get a show of hands?
Did we just approve up to 12 units an acre though?
No.
Not
Not
here.
here.
Okay.
6 to 8.
So
All
just
right.
modify 2 to 3 stories.
got it.
Cool. Next slide. Now we're gonna get deep.
Well, now I see the 8 to 12.
All right.
I can still see, the 6 to 8 on this one too.
And 2 to 3.
I would agree with trustee on it. If we're not gonna allow them. to
Trustee
put-
Timmy is what we're.
Trustee Timmy, if
Yeah.
trustee Timmy is not gonna allow high density at the expressway, why would you do it here?
No, I agree.
All right, so all right, again, 6 to 8, 2 to 3.
Yep.
Sure. Show of hands to support that. I still see a majority. There we go. Next slide.
Sorry, just taking notes.
All good.
Wait, can we stop for 1 second? So what we just did is agreed that there should be dwelling units in Centennial?
There can be.
They can now.
Yeah, there already is now.
Okay.
We have that now. What we're doing is we're restricting it more because right now they can do 8 to 12 and we're restricting it to
6 to 8.
6 to 8. And we're restricting it to 2 to 3 stories at the max.
We already have Sunrise, retirement home.
Well, there's that
Done
apartment
something.
complex back there too.
New development.
Yeah.
So we're actually making it a little stricter.
I do see one point of clarification though. I asked the question when the Centennial, so when we say, what was it, what's the new one, 6 to 8?
Mm.
So you can't build 5,
Yeah, it's
6 to 8.
it's literally 6 to 8, okay.
If you want to build 5, that's between 6 and 8.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
So
So it should say fewer than 8.
Up to.
Well, that's what I'm asking,
Up to
do we
eight.
want
It
6
should
to
say
8
up
or do we
to.
want fewer than 8? There's a big difference.
No more than 8.
that, so these would be set up as a maximum
Okay, all right.
density.
And then we can get into that
6-8,
when we
right?
amend the overlay
Up to
district.
8.
Because the
Up to
current
8.
Centennial overlay doesn't say that. Because it says.
Now it says up to 12. Before it was 12 and above.
All right, so up to 8, 2 to 3 stories. Next slide.
So we just did Centennial.
Yeah. Okay. Boulevard mixed use, 6 to 8, 2 to 3. Does everybody support that?
I'm not sure I'm not sure if you must have a commercial first floor though. I mean, it's probably a good idea,
28th
but
Street, you don't think?
I don't, but requiring that they have to have a commercial first floor?
We're just talking about 28th Street here, right? We're not talking about Charlevoix Drive or
No.
or Cherville Village or any of that
Why
stuff.
not?
They'd probably want one.
Because it's right.
I would think they would too, but requiring to do it,
I don't think it needs to be required.
I don't either.
Is there a reason that you had the requirement, Danielle?
So that was more so for existing character because 28th Street is largely commercial. But what we can do is even take that a step further and say you can have ground floor residential, but the frontage of 28th Street must be some sort of commercial enterprise.
Can I,
Or
can
we
I
could
throw,
scrap that all together.
can I throw out a suggestion here? And maybe I'm off base on this, but in my opinion, if you built a multi-story building on 28th Street and you put residential on the first floor, I kind of get the feeling that that's going to be a little lower end than what we want to see. I think having commercial on the first floor with residential on the upper floors is going to be a little more higher end. And
Look
I,
at what they did on Bridge. They put a lot of condos up above the new commercial development up there, but I don't believe there's any on the first floor except off
So,
Bridge.
Mhm.
I appreciate your comment there of having it on the first floor. On 28th Street, I think that's appropriate.
So let me throw a curveball at you. Retirement community.
Are they gonna put it on 28th Street? It's expensive real estate.
I don't know, but I mean, a retirement community would definitely want things on the first floor. I mean, it's for.
Then we just put them right. We probably wouldn't have that on 28th Street. You'd put that further back.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
20 years here.
But I would argue if it's a resident, if it was a retirement community on 28th Street, it's gonna be multi-story, and the ground story is a hair salon, a bank, and some sense of outside.
all I'm saying is, should we require it?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, if you guys think so, I don't think you should require it, but
All right,
that's.
6 to 8, 2 to 3 require commercial. Show of hands who support that. Majority. There we go. Next slide.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
Was Danielle?
Mhm.
I have virtually zero subject matter expertise, and we've hired an expert. And we're greatly watering down a lot of what she's done.
Mhm.
And I get some of the motivation on story, like, how many stories and how many dwellings. But we're making all of these districts now almost synonymous. There's no differentiation between them. Can you comment on it? Should there be differentiation? Even if we're scaling them all back, should we be having them all, or we're flattening, we're making one continuum? Should there be staggering? Should they all be halved?
They can go to Ada.
So I think that
Can't wait.
No, I get that. I'm not saying more. You're actually missing it. You're taking them all 6 to 8. Should we be having them all or something?
I think that these
Distinctions without a difference.
these categories would still be different fundamentally because of first, the location, and second, the permitted uses that would be allowed. So for example, 28th Street would allow the mixed use with the first floor commercial,
I always have a pen.
but perhaps that might not be the situation that occurs in Centennial Park where it's likely to be all commercial, or I'm sorry, all residential.
Wait,
For
this doesn't give
example.
you pause. This is.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, would I recommend there be a bit more variation there and perhaps the consideration for more stories? Yes, but you guys are the decision makers, so I'm going with your call.
What would be the benefit to having more stories?
So I think that there is such a pressure for housing development in all areas across the board, especially for folks to age in place and especially for that like missing middle residential. So to encourage for redevelopment opportunities, that's kind of where you're going to see that sweet spot where if you were to allow higher density or perhaps density bonuses or more stories, then these types of developments are likely to pencil out more for developers and to spur that or encourage redevelopment opportunities. That makes sense?
So you're saying if we were to allow, for instance, let's just pretend for a minute, the area across from Tassel Park, which puts up against a big hill, if we allowed for a 4-story building in that area, we would attract potentially better development or a nicer development maybe, because we would encourage more creativity.
No more profitability. You encourage a developer.
Well, that comes too.
But that's where then your architectural standards kick in and you say, yes, you can build whatever it is you're trying to do, but the township requires that your building look like this. No questions asked, full stop, that's what it is. So it's more so regulating what your development looks like rather than what it's used for in that context of the village.
Okay.
Not to say that 4 stories is going to happen, but just.
No, I'm just trying to get a complete understanding of.
Yeah, and it's not like, that we're on the side of developers here or don't have the township's best interest in mind, but the idea here is to kind of open the door for possibility for redevelopment efforts to combat aging office parks and to modernize zoning ordinance language and so forth.
Let's hear from trustee Timmy.
So by going 4 or 5 stories across from Tassel Park and having all that extra activity and traffic, we'll have to give up part of our Tassel Park for another lane of traffic.
Well, it's probably not the best example. We'd have it somewhere else, not at Tassel Park.
Yeah. That's
Well,
what
all the same.
No,
points.
we were talking about that area earlier for development, so that's why I used as an analogy.
We've got more to cover and I want to go into the map next. We go to the next.
Well,
Yeah.
So I guess I got 2 points. One, it seems like we're really, really, really flying through this. And this seems to me like this is probably the most important thing. I guess I'm not allowed to pay the new card, as relatively new. We spend a lot of time approving things over 832 square feet and we approve every single one of them. It seems like a waste of our time.
Mhm.
This is something we should be spending our time on, and it seems like we're trying to rush through it. So
I
that's my
think it
first
just
point.
feels like we're rushing because we tabled the first two items of the meeting.
Yeah, we're 2 hours in, which it's not a function.
But can't we do it over 3 or 4 meetings or like?
Well, but my point is like, most of us that haven't played the new card, like, have been through this for years.
Okay.
And we're taking that experience and bringing it forward, right? And so we can absolutely slow it down if that's the desire of the planning commission to do that.
Just by singular, so I'm gonna make my next point. The multi-units, like having a first floor commercial, second floor, maybe a condos, or I hate to say the word apartment because no one's gonna hear everything I say after the word apartment. Also brings in a different demographic. So I get Cascade, I get the logo. That's part of why I wanted to be on this commission, was to preserve Cascade as it exists. But I also get the feeling it's like you walk into, I'm gonna use an analogy, you walk into GE Aviation and it's a monopoly. It's 60-year-old male Caucasians. It's gonna collapse. When they're of the age where they're dying, the whole thing's gonna implode. Where do younger people move into Cascade? I don't want giant apartment complexes, I agree. I don't want more hotels, I agree. But aren't they looking for, living above a storefront? If you look at like hip Charlottes, you look at hip Atlantas, and I'm not saying I want to be hip, so I gotta be careful with my words, but how do we get a richer cross section in Cascade?
We don't want that.
Why can't they live in Ada and then move to Cascade when they have their family?
Cascade is,
That's fair.
Cascade is
That's-
not the first
I wanna
place
have
to
a
come and live.
Yeah.
Cascade is a third home.
Yeah,
It's
go to
it's a
Ada.
goal
there,
to get
go to
yeah, exactly.
downtown.
It's a goal to get here, right?
Okay.
And having an apartment that you pay $800 a month so that you can have the 49546 zip code, like
Or-
90210.
49.
Well, that's fair. That's fair. I just want the answer.
All right,
Or
a quick-
4930.
a quick show of hands. Who's good with moving to the next slide?
I do have one quick question. It seems like is our goal to grow the population of Cascade, or are we good at the 20,000 that we already have?
That's
I
a
guess
great-
I'm a little confused.
I think I like it just the way it is.
Impression that we were not like
We did
hell bent on like
growing.
grow.
Yeah,
It's gonna grow.
Controlled.
go ahead.
I'm listening to all these statements here and I'm thinking, so we want a great place to raise our families that's safe, that provides all the amenities. But as soon as you're one of those 60-year-old guys from
GE.
GE that wants a place to live when they retire, you got to move out of the community. That's what I'm hearing here today. Because you don't want to live in a $200,000 to $400,000 to $600,000 house and you want a nice small condo for you and your wife. You got to leave town. That's what I'm hearing.
There's current condos here. You can buy one of those.
Condos and what we're providing provides for condos, no?
Well, it might. I'm
6 to
hoping,
8 dwelling
I'm
units
hoping it
and 2 to
does,
3
but-
floors.
my sense is this is not a real inviting discussion for somebody who has spent 40 or 50 years in Cascade and wants to look at different opportunities for housing.
Where do they live now?
Well, we all live in big houses where they raise their children. And the children go off to school and they're
I don't know.
sitting.
I know. a lot of
I'll
people
be
that-
devil's advocate. Because I'm about to, I hate to think I'm being boss 60, but I am almost 60. My wife and I are looking at living maybe in downtown Grand Rapids above a business. And we're thinking, downtown Grand Rapids is just too busy. Wouldn't it be cool if there's an opportunity in Cascade? Exactly what he's saying. It doesn't have to be huge. It doesn't have to be at scale. We don't have to have the entire 28th Street 5 stories, but a few options.
Maybe
I have to move out. Maybe I do.
Building by Tesla Park and I got lambasted, but that's exactly what I'm trying to say is we want a place where you can have a nice development that would allow for that.
For the full spectrum of the population, from kids to folks that are 70 or 80 years old, they all need to find a home in Cascade. And I think that's part of what we have to look at here.
Kramer's old property up there by the highway is probably the perfect space for if you were gonna do a mass redevelopment of an area. That would be a great
Joe, I'm okay with that. I just don't want it to be more than 3 stories. No, I'm serious. I mean, I don't think we need a 6-story
I concur.
senior
I'm not saying it has to be 6 stories.
empty nester living,
Not disagreeing with
you
We're
know, like
allowing for the
like the
developers.
development that was in here, and the guy wanted to have, what was it, 5 stories? And it was cool, and yeah, great, but that's just not Cascade, right? And we just, you know,
And my challenge with shooting down that gentleman as we did was we shut the door on further conversation about what else that development might have been able to look like.
yeah.
And we just said, no. And one of the thoughts that was put out was, let's continue the conversation with the gentleman and see what else he might be willing to do. It was a class act that he was bringing to town. And we just shut the door out.
Because he was such a class act?
He walked
No.
out of the meeting.
Yeah, but
It was a
before,
fortunate child who walked out the door.
and okay,
Instead, it could only be done at scale. I don't think he didn't open the door and to have much conversation.
there were two other
Had to be
people
this density or it wouldn't work.
that spoke that said that let's just have a conversation about it, and we weren't willing to have that conversation. I think that there were other paths we could have
I
chosen.
don't know that that's fair, Joe. We did have that conversation. Grace met with this guy. Brian met with this guy.
Okay, and I did.
Yeah,
And we invited him to come tonight and be active in this so
Yeah.
that we could make sure.
Like, there were multiple, like, before he arrived there were many forays with this dude, and he was the same petulant child that we dealt with in this meeting. It has to be my way or the highway.
You know, the other thing,
The highway. and
He stormed out.
the other thing I'll say, Joe, and this isn't a shot at all,
Only been in the highway service.
but let's take, for example, Quail Ridge, what the discussion we had earlier. That would be a great place to do a huge condo community for the empty nesters, right? But so, and we all, not we all, but people shot it down, saying, no, we want to put a park there. But there's an opportunity that you've already got a beautiful, and I'm just saying as an example, there's a perfect example to do a huge 2-story condo community, like massive development.
But that's where you and I disagree. When you have a massive development, you have pinch points. Now the roads leading into there from the expressway, now you lose, you got to put additional lanes in. I don't want many massive developments. I think you and I are on the same page would have 2 different implementations of the same vision. If you have Jimmy John's and you've got an extra story above it and Grandma and Grandpa Jones live there, and 6 doors down I don't know, what's next? McDonald's has a floor above it and Grandma and Grandpa Smith live there. You don't have this massive build out where you've got giant pinch points and huge traffic. It's dispersed growth.
I think the way you get the best development is by letting the developers get creativity and get creative to come up with something really unique. And the more flexibility we can give them in presenting a plan, and also allowing ourselves the ability to curtail the plan or expand on it, is ultimately how you get smart development.
Go to
If we-
Centennial Point, tear down the office building of your choice and bring us your plans.
Exactly.
Or
That-
convert the office building into some cool apartments.
But there has to be incentive for a developer to do that.
Would be
And
so
maybe
cool to find.
there's
I mean,
a-
no, seriously, and put that into like luxury apartments. Pyramid. The steel case pyramid.
Yeah, that's not in our
The
township.
6
No,
to
I'm
8,
just saying,
the
like-
6 to 8 do that with me. Joe, what would you propose that we're changing on this? From what you heard?
Daniel, I would say, I mean, there's a number of, credible development firms in Grand Rapids. I mean, we could just ask them, hey, with what density would you need to bring a good product to Cascade? And if it's in that ballpark, we know we're good. And if they're saying way higher than, just to get an idea of what, because they're the ones that would be paying for and would need it. So, I mean, it's helpful to hear. They're always gonna want to. And again, we'll put our caps on it, so they're restricted to that.
Go higher.
Do we want to limit it to a specific area like Executive Drive, like that general area, not Centennial Park, but behind the McDonald's, like that old office park, right? Like, do we want to say, hey, we're gonna get creative, that's where it goes?
I think it would be helpful to find, it can just one area at least, where, hey, we'll give you just a little bit more. And again, to that,
Well,
let
yeah,
them use their
just-
creativity.
Let's see how it plays out.
Whoever's here 10 years from now can look at that area after it's redeveloped and say, do we want that in Centennial Park?
Right. I think that would be a more
Then-
appropriate
If you want
step.
them to be creative, it's an opportunity to fix Star Drive, right?
Right.
That could be part of the creativity.
Shouldn't we let them change it in 10 years then, if they think that it's?
That's my point.
appropriate?
Like, if they like what we've just carved out this one area for Joe's vision. Right? And if they like Joe's vision, they can take it and they can.
Joe's Park.
Yeah.
For any developers out there, keep in mind that you might want,
You know, I,
might want to call your.
What do you think of that, trustee Timmy?
Joe's place.
I like this way we've got it right now. 2,
Okay.
3 stories. No more than 8.
I think if they want to come to us with something more than 3 stories, then let them come to us. And if it's,
Let them come to us.
Well, then you have to make that okay in your zoning though. Like that, or that opens up the door to having more PUDs and more PUDs and more PUDs. If you're allowing, like, so if you say,
Centennial Park?
like, if you say, okay, if you have a density cap for a particular piece of land, but then you're opening the door and saying, well, developer, show us what you have, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but what I'm saying is that now offers the prime opportunity to dictate exactly what it is that you guys want out of that, so that way you can get the development that's codified for it. So that way you don't have to go through all these negotiations and all these PUD processes, and everything could be that you want is done by right by zoning.
So why couldn't we just say that, for instance, in the Horizon Office Park area, if you want to redevelop into a mixed use, we allow 2 to 3 stories. However, along the highway, if you have so much open space, we would be open to a proposal allowing up to 4 stories.
So you can codify a density bonus program if you would like to.
Can you double click on this and come back to us, do some research, maybe work in coordination with Brian?
Yeah, and that's the way Centennial Park is written right now, is the properties along the highway are allowed to have higher buildings than the ones in the interior of their park. So we have some
Right.
examples of that we
And
can.
let's go really deep on that and when you
Okay.
come back. And does anybody have any objection to that?
No, I think that would be good. I think we're,
My concern though is timing with all of this.
Mhm.
So if that's the case, then I may suggest that perhaps Brian, or if you folks would be interested or open to the idea of a special meeting, so we can get a meeting in between.
Sure.
Because as of right now, the way that this is scheduled, you would have to open up the 63-day comment period on October 16th.
we should have we should have a workshop meeting
Yes.
to discuss this, and those who want to attend the workshop could do that.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah.
Tim? Okay. And I'm on vacation the first week of October, but I'll make sure that my colleague Chris is here.
Okay.
If it happens to land that week.
Well, we'll get Joe's Park done.
So as we're looking at this, we just discussed timeline. What,
10-story.
I know there's a goal to have it done by January 1st. Is that just self-imposed or is there some? Right, but I'm asking what's driving that? What is
Yeah, I
the
don't see
impetus?
the rush. Let's just take our time and do it. Right.
Okay.
The original rush was to have it done it was just put out there as a goal. It was not a
We missed the goal.
statutory, yeah, and that's fine. We adjusted the goal.
Well, that makes me feel better because now we have a lot more time
Yeah.
to work through this in workshop.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe that is, you know what, maybe what we should do is schedule a workshop. I will get a 24x36 map. I can get that printed out and
That'd
I
be
can
great.
bring it and we can draw on it. And we can,
And let's just use that workshop to focus exclusively on this, not a typical planning meeting, right?
Yeah, this can be a special meeting
Yeah.
that we hold and.
Let's
whatever
do it
works
on Monday
best.
night like we're here and yeah.
I like the idea of this getting through the planning commission before the end of the year. I think that's a good goal. I like to try and make it that goal, but at the same time, I don't want to skip things and miss things because we're rushing. But I do think we should focus on that. Particularly because what I see is the potential that after the first of the year, there may be different people sitting up here. And I don't want to see the remaining people have to go backwards to bring the new people up to speed.
that was the original thought as to why, yeah.
Right.
And so let's do our best to give you, maybe that's our new goal. The planning commission gives her all the recommendations that she needs to go in front of the board by the end of the year. Does everybody agree with that?
Yeah. Good goal.
Yeah.
Doable.
All right, let's go to the next slide. We can give you just high level feedback. Does anybody have any concerns with this one? Perhaps besides the map that you're gonna bring, so we can get tighter on that then.
Mhm.
with the addresses. Any other concerns with this besides those specific addresses, which ones we add and not add?
I think we already addressed this one
Yeah.
pretty good.
Let's go to the next one.
Oh, number 16. Yes, so. What exactly am I looking at?
That third bullet really concerns me.
This is the Four Corners area?
Well, so this is mostly the Meadowbrook PUD. So we have
Okay.
an enormous amount of existing light industrial in this area already. The very southwest corner, that you kind of see in the aerial image, that's that new, relatively new, Edward Rose development. That's a number of apartments. That'll probably just be commercial along the Beltline and 60th. And then the industrial is more towards, along 52nd and Craft.
And Brian, do you recall off the top of your head what the units per acre were for those new apartments that we approved over there?
I think was right around 6.
Is that
units
probably?
an acre.
Okay,
4 to 6.
that's all right. I'm just trying to be somewhat consistent. If we just approved a development of 10 units per acre, I would guess I would like to know that we're reducing it. You know what I mean? If that's what we're doing. So I'm comfortable with that.
So this one here, so where it says craft in the International Drive, where the word craft is, that's almost lax, is that correct?
Yeah, that
That's the
large.
cemetery up on the corner.
Lex?
Yep,
to
yeah, the
right.
cemetery is the little one in the corner. Craft or Lax is almost to the south, almost to 60th Street.
Okay,
Down
so
Craft.
down from craft, okay.
Any feedback you want to give her to go look into on that?
Should that be 4 stories? Should that be 2 to 3 as well?
Come back to us on what you think that should be.
Okay.
If there's a reason that you put 4, if that was just a,
I'd be curious how tall Lax is in comparison to.
instead of saying 2 to 4, do we want to say a building height perhaps? And then that encapsulates. I just throw that out there specifically as I think about industrial, right? It's not about the number of stories as much as the height because of
Yeah.
the use.
Yeah.
And I think the master plan usually has more of those stories and the zoning would get specifically to a height number.
Can we go back to the map now and ask the questions that
Are
we
we-
couldn't address in these
Are we
slides?
through all of her slides?
No, we got one more.
Oh, is there one more?
Nope, just this one.
Oh, I
the
thought we
PUD
had
stuff.
farmland preservation.
I put that at the end. So yeah, we've got to circle back to that one.
So on our way back, can we stop at one quick second at the Centennial?
She's doing research and coming back to us on this one. So
But I have an additional topic on this. So we have this overlay. So part of this, if I understand correctly, so we do this master planning, then we go back and we change our zoning. Is theirs to get it in line, right? Isn't that the flow?
that is the flow.
Okay, so it's an opportunity. Why do we have a overlay? Is this an opportunity? To me, an overlay was a Band-Aid that we threw on top of something. Is this an opportunity when we take the next step to fix the overlay and remove the overlay, get the overlay to actually work in the map? You know what I'm saying? I don't like
That's something we
overlays.
can even, is that something
Overlay
we can
was to
easily
allow
do?
redevelopment of a certain area and not encourage that type of development in the rest of the zoning surrounding it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, it was to give a little more opportunity to the business park, again, because they were struggling with vacancies and things like that. So to allow the business
So
park.
can we just take the overlay area and do a cut and paste? So cut the overlay out and come up with a new name for that area and get rid of an overlay?
Yeah, I don't think
Achieve
it's
the
an
same thing?
issue having one necessarily, but we can always look at that.
So that would be my recommendation. Typically, just personally speaking, I don't quite see the point of overlays unless if you have some sort of environmental thing that you're working around, like an important preserved wetland or critical dunes or something.
Or
But-
no.
It makes it easier if you just codify it as these are your district standards, that's it. So that, and it increases user friendliness, it increases zoning enforcement procedures, like all of those things. So that would be my recommendation, would be to eliminate the overlay and anything that would be within this new potentially zoned designation as centennial mixed use, that it would be that all of those things that you want within that overlay would be done by right in the ordinance.
Can I ask Brian a question? Is it easier to implement an overlay or to change the underlying zoning of properties? Is one a different, from a legal standpoint, is one an easier path than the other?
I think they're very similar
I mean, I think a lot of times overlays are implemented because it is easier to just be like, yep, here's your new standards, and we don't want to go through your ordinance or through our ordinance and clear up any inconsistencies. Not to say that like whoever did this was wrong in the past, but I'm just saying like my personal
Right.
recommendation would be to,
Can you come back
Remove
to us
overlay.
with what it would take to clean it up and remove it?
yeah,
From a
it
le-
would just be a zoning.
Yeah, from a
update.
legal perspective, I think both of them follow the similar path.
Right, but to get
I
it
think-
codified with.
I think part of the
Oh,
problem is
yeah.
that this whole area had multiple zoning districts.
that's my
in it.
point.
It's all
What-
shaded different colors.
What do we need to do to get it cleaned up?
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead.
hear you.
But this would be the time to do it, right? Because we're opening up the can of
That's why I'm
worms.
asking her to come back to us with what would be required.
That's
to do
great.
it.
Sure.
So,
Good question.
yeah, good one. All right, let's go to farmland. And at this point, I mean, we're gonna have a workshop, so I'm just looking to give her data to come back to us with.
Oops.
There we go.
Oh, I had a quick question about the sliding scale thing, where if you had a 10-acre property and you
Yeah, I didn't
chunked
see that
off
either.
100,000 square feet of it, what would happen then if you sold the other part, the remaining 9 acres or whatever? What prevents the next owner from
You wouldn't be able,
taking off another part?
you wouldn't be able to be smaller than 10 acres.
Your land.
The
would-
limit is 10
Correct.
acres.
So you would have
That'd be the
like,
minimum split.
We couldn't do a dwelling.
You'd have.
Or
value
not just a
of
minimum
that land.
split, but just one house on the 10 acres is the idea, right? So if you want to split off 5 acres to someone else to farm, they could farm it, but
Okay.
they can't build a home on it. There's only one home
I see.
per the 10
Okay.
acres.
Yeah,
So in
I
Lowell,
didn't
they do-
understand it
they-
either until you just explained it to me, so.
In Lowell, they do that only at, it's, I believe, 40 acres.
yeah, best practice for farmland preservation is typically 40 acres, but in this particular situation, that's likely not making sense. So it's more of, creating that. How do we allow lot splits to still occur, but also keep in mind of the goals to preserve the farmland that is left?
Well, the guys growing their farms in Cascade might have a different opinion of that, though. They might prefer to see it at 40 acres.
This doesn't look
They
good
might-
to me at all. This looks like liberals coming over and taking over the whole process and saying you can have a house on this land, but you can't do anything with the rest of it.
What would you like to see
Except pay
different?
taxes. We're gonna take all the value of your land away. You can have a house on a 10-acre parcel. But you can't do anything with the rest of it.
That's what farmland preservation is.
No, farmland preservation, we can buy the development rights of farms.
Yeah.
That's how you preserve farmland. The farmer can use his land, farm it forever, and never develop it. We bought those rights. That's been done in Caledonia.
Right, but you're never gonna get that.
That's the best
If
way to
liberal-
succeed in,
If
in protecting the farmland. And we can make it very
That's the- that's
difficult
the
to
best
develop
way,
it, but
but
that's
if-
the best way.
But right now, with the supply and demand so out of whack, right now, the farmer's gonna clearly go to selling it to someone to develop, right?
I wouldn't say that. There's several acres of land. There's a lot of acreage that recently in the last 5 years was not tilled and is now being tilled. We are farming more of Cascade Township on the east side of the township now than we were 5 years ago.
Okay, let me try this differently, because I'm surprised you're arguing with me. My belief was that you created a table and you brought the farmland preservation. My belief is you are wholly supportive of the sliding scale. And in fact, you like Lowell's being even more
I
restricted
believe,
than this.
I believe that we should be, if our goal is to protect farmland, the ultimate way to do that is what Timmy just said. But if that doesn't work, the next best thing is to align our zoning to be similar with our neighbors.
Okay,
Because our neighbors are protecting their, or
I'm
keeping
happy with your
farmland
first
a whole
sentence.
lot better.
I'm happy with
Then-
your first
then we
sentence.
are.
The best way is to do what Timmy just said, and that's what I thought I said. So yes, it seems that way, and it is the best way to preserve farmland.
But I guess my view is I like the idea of looking at all the options, and I certainly don't want to make it more challenging for the methods our neighbors are using to preserve farmland by allowing a 50 house development PUD right across the street from where they're not allowed to have more than one residence on 40 acres. Like, to me, we
Oh, I
should be
agree.
more in
I agree with
line
that. I think it's a
with our
different
neighbors'
topic.
zoning.
Yeah, I'm
So
going to volunteer to put the maps
Farmland-
together so we can see what's.
These are
across the
not
street.
farms, these little 10-acre parcels. They're not farms.
Correct.
The farmland preservation term, I suppose I should clarify, is that's a toolbox, right? Of all of the things that you can do to preserve farmland, zoning being one, purchase of development rights being another, transfer of development rights program being another. So when I say farmland preservation here, it's not necessarily saying this is the land that the township is going to target for a acquisition process and helping through permanent preservation processes. While that might be a tool within the toolbox, with speaking with regard to zoning mechanisms that can be put in place to preserve active farmland as it is today, or to encourage local producers to keep doing the work that they're doing, there are ways that you can do that within your zoning, and taking a close look at minimum lot sizes is one of those things. So yes, but also like there's a whole range of things that you can do.
This isn't working for me, though. You're saying you gotta have a 10-acre parcel, which is fine, one house per 10 acres. But then require the excess land to be preserved. So this is privately owned land that you're throwing a requirement on that they can't do nothing with it.
Then I think, to push back a little bit, I think that if I was sitting in your seat, I would say, if you want a large lot residential home, then you can go to the rural residential area. You do not need to build a house in the farmland preservation area. That's probably what I would say.
Timmy, what would you change? Like if you could reword it, what would you rather see?
We're telling somebody you gotta buy the land
I
and
get
then
it. What
you
would you
have to
rather see?
preserve it as farmland.
So what would you like to see? Like, what would you?
Get rid of that. I mean, if you buy a 10-acre parcel, what is it gonna be? One house per 10 acres.
Right.
You just accomplished the same thing, but you didn't make.
What if
that
they bought the 10 acres and then divided it up into one?
Oh, he's saying it's a minimum of 10.
10 acres.
Okay.
But
You're
that's,
you're basically,
One house per 5.
that's arguably
Or
more
used to be.
restrictive.
yeah,
Because
Yeah,
that
it's
you
only
can't
one
split.
house per 2.
ag 2, it's 4. Ag
Yeah,
1,
I
it's-
think I see where he's coming from. Don't split the land.
Okay, so no splits allowed.
Under
10 acre minimum,
no
that's it.
splits under 10 acres allowed.
Okay.
That gives you.
Before, like, does
Open
everybody,
space.
does everybody?
What's it? I don't know if I.
That was not
concur
where I
with
thought you were going. So we went from, you
Wait.
want to restrict.
we have a committee that's working on this. I don't know that we need to come up with a decision right
Then
now.
let's.
But it's not gonna go nowhere if Timmy's the trustee and he's shooting us down before we even get the ink dry. I want his opinion.
Trustee.
I mean, yeah,
he's not even, he just not even know.
He just nuked our committee. He dropped the bomb. Poof, we're gone.
One
All right.
house per 10 acres. You've accomplished your open space.
Yeah, but Timmy, what happens if I buy 10 acres and I put a house up and then my kids come back from college and I want to have them build a house and have them get,
You should have bought 20.
Per 10 acres.
so I can't give them an acre of my 10 and let them build a house on it.
One
See?
house per 10 acres. That's
so-
the zoning.
So now you're telling me that's basically what she said. It's just as restrictive. Now you're telling me I can't do what I want to with my
That's the
land.
open space.
This allows
not
you
far-
to split to 100,000 square foot.
We
Let's
said
say
2 acres.
I have 10 acres.
2.25 acres.
I sell 100,000 of
A
that.
farmer who wants to retire, he says, okay, I'm gonna start farming less and less. I'm gonna split off this part so it'll continue to be farmed. And he has an opportunity to, what's the word? To basically, liquidate over time. He either has to farm the whole place or get out of Dodge. Is that what you're saying?
Oh.
I'd recommend, we're gonna have some experts from the county and
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
speak to us, to
Let's table
the
this.
subcommittee. Yeah, I'd agree with.
I don't disagree with you, Timmy. I'm just not sure that wordage is good either, you know?
Is trustee Timmy on the Farmland Preservation Committee?
No, but you can always attend a meeting
It
if you
feels to me
want.
like an opportunity for trustee Timmy to join.
Definitely.
Farmland.
Should be.
We would love for you to come to our meeting.
You guys, Can we get a motion to put trustee Timmy on the, all right. Come to the meeting. I think
We have a speaker.
7 a.m. in the morning.
On the 27th, we have a speaker from the county that's going to address this.
8 AM on that day.
What day?
Week from Wednesday,
27th, 8:00.
Week from Wednesday,
8:00.
In the morning.
8 or 7.
I would make the motion that Timmy attends that but does not join the committee. That'll give us time to get our ducks in a row and present something that he likes.
Also make a motion that trustee Timmy provide all coffee and donuts.
Cookies.
Support.
If he were to join now, we're going.
Yeah, as a newcomer.
All right, we'll table and let you work with them.
Provide
Okay.
the Irish coffee.
Scott has some questions about maps.
Can we go up a couple slides? Oh, wait, oh, right there, that one, perfect. Okay, I've asked this before and nobody's ever been able to give me an answer, I don't think, but
36.
On the existing map, what are the black asterisks in the village? What do they represent? Because I noticed they're not on the proposed map, and so I'm curious what we're losing there.
Two of them.
There's the gateway, proposed gateways, I believe are the red stars.
Signs, wasn't it?
They're
Yeah, I asked that question.
redevelopment
I don't
ready
even see the
parcels,
red
but I
ones.
don't
I
know
was just
their
looking at the
really
black
history
ones.
behind them.
The red ones are the gateways. That's where the signs are supposed to be.
ones.
The Drury failed to put the sign in the wrong spot. We had this last meeting.
Yeah, they were signs.
So that's
Right.
on Thornapple. No, those are redevelopment ready parcels, I believe, and I don't really know the background, but one's on the Thornapple Center property, so that's been
Okay,
identified for
I
a
think I
while.
remember that now. Thank you. Okay, so we're not including those redevelopment ready ideas on the new map? Is that?
We can, I think Danielle is focused on the designations.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
All right. I saw the asterisks on the one and not on the other, and I remembered talking about it, so I was just looking
yeah,
for a refresher
those
there.
are things we can carry over.
No, you're okay. I'm not partial to them. I just,
Yeah, that's kind of
I
how.
think they they create confusion, so I'll cross that off my list. And then,
But can I respectfully disagree? I don't think that's what, I don't have it up, but I believe the red were gateways. It's where we want people to come into the community. The black is where we currently have a sign saying it is a gate. You're saying you're in Cascade. That's not
No,
right.
the map key called that they're redevelopment ready properties is what the key is. And the orange is proposed
Right.
gateway features. I think where the orange is where they were gonna propose to put signs.
or 96.
Not by the Drury Inn.
I don't know.
We
what that
already
was
have a
not up
sign there.
Right, there's already, right, so yeah, it's a future map.
Should be a 5-story sign.
One I don't know is a yellow dot.
And then do we need
They don't blink.
Do we need to designate that in certain zoning districts, like for instance, farmland preservation, we allow public recreational uses, public services, maybe? I'm just thinking down the road, if like along Buttrick, let's say, with all this PFAS talk, we're expanding our water infrastructure at a rapid rate. And I am envisioning that at some point there's going to be a need for a water tower. And if our zoning doesn't allow for that, do we handcuff ourselves in getting drinking water to the residents?
So that would be part of like your permitted uses that are within your district. So you would have government uses and buildings as a permitted use, and many communities refer to stuff like that as essential services. So if you
Right.
have like, I don't know, like a power grid or whatever.
Substation.
Mhm. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
certainly something you can
I just
allow.
want to make sure that we're keeping that in the back of our minds that, you know, because I know before we talked about an industrial area, just actually another one of my points. And for instance, east of Thornapple River Drive, north of 48th Street, on the proposed map, I believe that's drawn as industrial. I think the goal was for that to be something other than industrial, if I'm not mistaken, but that's what we had originally approved. And so if that area is to not be, at one time when we talked about the industrial, there wasn't, our current zoning does not allow for a park in an industrial area.
Mhm.
And so I want to make sure that if we're going to change that, definition, that we do that
I mean,
to allow for recreational uses in those areas. If that's still what at one time, that's what we talked about, I thought, but. And
many
we did talk
communi-
about that area being shaded arc, I thought was what we voted to change it to. I believe the township board voted that too, did they not?
They did.
Okay, so we need to draw that. So the
Which area,
correct
Scott?
color. North of 48th Street and east of Thornapple River Drive. You might want to, I mean, that could be mistaken. I thought that was,
This right here.
yeah, really, I guess, yeah, that area along Thornapple River Drive.
Safe color.
The airport green, this area that's shown as Airport Greenway now?
Part of the problem being solar
Here.
here. On our proposed map,
All of this.
yeah, is that not, the other maps had a key and this one doesn't. Can you go to the other map that had the key?
Go back one slide.
There we go. Okay, so when I look at that area on on the east end of the airport, essentially between M6 and Thornhill River Drive,
Mhm.
I believe, is that shaded industrial? I believe that it is.
No.
Airport Greenway.
Airport Greenway? Okay,
In rural preservation.
okay, thank you for clarifying that.
Do you have color needs for the next map? Would that be helpful?
No, I'll try to keep my questions to a minimum. I just,
No, I was like going to suggest that I have a capability, like I could make like a colored blind map, or if colors are
I
tough.
don't,
Accommodations in these meetings.
right, I don't need any accommodations. And I don't even have a screen. I don't even have my own screen. See, and now I understand why.
Not to suggest that you are, but I'm saying that to the group, that if anybody has a tough time differentiating
Appreciate the
colors, I
offer.
can do that.
That's good, but it's fine.
Okay, so.
Yeah, member Bruno.
I'm gonna come back to this. I wasn't articulate the first time and I'm not sure it'll be any better this time, but I'm gonna try.
That's what I thought.
The very first item in the legend is farmland preservation. Let's say the palest green on the screen.
Mhm.
As shown, I think is larger than our non-overlay zone overlay. I
It
don't say
is larger than your current future land use map.
that. Okay,
Rural preservation.
thank you for acknowledging that. So now I need to get my other two members on my farmland preservation committee to hear that.
I'm
Because I
sorry,
don't think
what
they
was
heard
that?
that. The current farmland preservation shading, the
Mhm.
lightest green, so the very first item on the legend.
Yeah.
Is bigger.
Is bigger. It has swallowed a perimeter of arc.
No, there's the difference there. It swallowed some of the suburban residential on the future land use designation. So there is
Hold on,
no.
hold on, but you're doing a comparison I'm not doing. I'm not comparing this to the current future land use. I'm comparing this to our current zoning.
Sure. But again, it's, I guess, yeah, there's not the buffer on the current future land use either.
Correct.
Yep,
So both are in conflict with what our zoning is.
correct, because they're a future one. They don't show the existing.
But
But
it's
you're right,
more-
you're right. They're different than.
But
the
it's
current.
more restrictive. You're right. It's like we're trying to unring a bell. So
We do that all the time.
Not necessarily, because so this is your future land use map. So what this does is a guiding policy for when rezonings do occur. You would measure that against your future land use map. So if your current,
perfect. Sorry, but perfect. So we're willing to, when we open up the zoning, we're gonna change zoning. We're willing to then, if we're gonna, this is the map, we're willing to take some of our currently arced zone and expand farmland preservation. You can't preserve farmland that's no longer farmland. I mean, I guess you could, but that's like saying we're gonna have farmland in a highway service corridor.
That's what you're doing.
Well,
We'll see you at the committee meeting.
I guess.
okay, so.
I'm
my-
not saying, Timmy, I'm not saying that's what I want to do.
No, I
I'm
think
saying
it
if
is-
this map is showing this, are we willing to do this or should this map be changed? That's the
Can
question.
you all dig into it at the committee and bring it back for the workshop?
Yes, but can I ask one question?
Yeah, I mean,
The area north of 48th Street, because the area west of Thornhill River Drive, north of 52nd, okay, the piece of property that we all are aware of, because, okay, that is listed on that map as farmland preservation or which?
Rural.
Preservation? Okay, did the township board not approve for that area and the area north of 48th Street to be the same?
They did, so
She
they're,
did.
they're showing a different,
Okay,
they're showing a different. one.
that's
They're
what I'm
introducing-
trying to understand is that I guess I wanted to make sure that is that, because it sounds to me like we're going back the other way again.
No, it's the same as it
Okay.
currently is, and they're introducing that Airport Greenway as kind of a new designation.
So would this
Yeah.
help to explain it? So the Airport Greenway could essentially function as your underlying zoning being like this rural preservation,
Mhm.
but then almost like a hatching of like a park target area, more or less, of this is rural preservation, but the township may have plans to acquire this land at some point in the future for preservation of open space or walking trails or parks or whatever the case may be.
Well, that would be fine. I guess I'd like to see those definitions.
Okay.
But yeah, it's hard for me to, jump on board with shading of different categories when the definitions aren't really, created yet, I guess. You know, the way you explained it sounded really good, but not having that aspect and seeing it drawn differently than what Timmy and his other board members just created almost, I just want to make sure somebody isn't trying to pull a curtain over it.
Scott, the good way to look at it, I think the airport greenway is even more restrictive than what it currently is.
I agree, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is it's all of a sudden it's a different color than what it was. It looks to me like somebody could interpret that as it's being changed opposite of what the board's goals were. And so I just want to make sure that we're still moving in the direction that they want it to be, because I don't want to on the 11th hour this to come up and blow up. So I want to make sure we're being.
I hear you.
I would, at the risk of alienating, I would disagree. Her packet that was given to us addresses that. She basically said this was all ARC. These properties have in common that they're all government owned. So it would be a perfect opportunity, and that's why it's in her explanation why she shaded it, and it is defined.
Okay, I apologize.
I think
I
that
do remember reading that though.
if we're moving with the park target area idea though, that this area could be a good idea to switch to that is what
Right.
I'm getting
The
at.
problem is it's not all government owned though. That's, I guess, part
A
of the
lot of,
problem.
yeah,
And it's a
Fair.
greenway target is what you're saying.
exactly.
Right.
Can you go
Exactly.
to your slide that shows it? I thought.
Because some of it is industrial currently.
Yes.
Road Commission, Airport, Kent County. So what isn't?
So right under Kent County, there are a few parcels that are privately owned that are what Thornapple Excavating operates out of.
And there's some other parcels in there that aren't having anything really being operated on that are privately owned, I think, too. Where Thornapple River Drive used to go through.
Yeah, there might be a couple there,
Yeah.
but the majority there are publicly owned.
All right.
I think we have given you a lot of data.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything I need clarified before.
Bigger maps. Bigger maps.
Much larger maps.
Yeah.
And technology that works.
So next time we meet, maybe I'll print two 24 by 36s, the one with the revised draft future land use map and then another with just an aerial map with
If I could throw-
boundaries.
Do we have to have this as a public hearing here, or can we do
Well,
it?
it has to be a public meeting, but no, we can hold it at the township
have it at the
or we can
township.
put, we can put tables in the middle here to sit around too.
Somewhere where we can walk around the table and kind
Yeah.
of really dig in.
Yeah, we can have it as a more informal.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I think it'd be great.
I'll bring markers, I'll bring
One of those.
post-it notes
Totally.
and two maps. Does that work?
The-
Okay.
All right,
The conference room at the Township Hall would be great because we could put stuff up on the big screen and
Yeah.
stand there and point at it.
that's kind of what I was, yeah.
Yeah,
Hey, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. no
thank
problem.
you. We're trying to target you at all.
No, I appreciate the creative discussion and the differences of opinion. Amongst, everyone on this board, I think that all viewpoints are valid and have a place in the conversation.
I mean, really, we
Some
don't
are just
want,
more valid than
we don't want, we want to welcome everyone to Cascade and everybody can do what they want as long as they're creative and they have really short buildings
Right.
and they don't build them anywhere where there isn't already an existing building, right? I mean, is that?
Yes, and we have to have tons of parks. Every
Lots of
open
parks, lots
space
of
needs to be a.
parks, lots of parks and small streets with not a lot of traffic.
I'm gonna move on to Article 9.
Nature.
Article 9, old business. I've got one thing I'll share. After the Wormies or during the Wormies hearing, there was some allegations about marijuana growth. And so Maddie, Brian and I spent the day together on Friday and we walked the entire Wormies property, most of it anyway. We also went and smelled dirt at various stages of culmination and age. And I gotta tell you, none of it smells.
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised by that. Like, I mean, we were knee deep in it and you know, I don't know if Brian or Maddie want to add anything to that, but I mean, we couldn't find weed. We asked them directly, like, are you growing marijuana? Nope.
Yeah, I asked him at the meeting.
Yeah. I just wanted to be clear when we get in front of the board, like that we went and walked it and we were ready to cite them if we saw it.
Well, one thing I'd like to say is out in the parking lot, one of the very passionate elderly woman that short hair, glasses, she made the comment that, you know, she walked onto the property and walked around and Mr. Chen came out and said, hey, you know, what are you doing here? And well, I have the right to, and I'm like, well, that's his private property. You don't have the right to do that. So I think we need to, like, next time we have a public hearing, if people show up, we need to say, you don't have the right to go on his property. And, you know, I think people are taking liberties they shouldn't.
Yeah, and I'll make that point at the board meeting. It was one of the reasons I wanted to go, is to say, hey, the three of us walked that together. And I wanted to address the smell and the marijuana, because I know it's gonna come up. There's been letters sent to all the trustee members, including trustee Timmy. And I wanted to just clearly say, look, we looked. I mean, Maddie, Brian, did you see any marijuana?
No.
I mean, we looked. So, and Maddie's the person that would issue a citation if something was not where it needs to be, so.
So she knows what it looks like, is what you're saying.
You guys even know what it looks like?
Yeah.
I would.
They Googled it.
All right, anybody else have any old business? All right, moving on to Article 10, any other business?
I have one.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this moving boundary, utility boundary, and then I think member Rissy brought up, you know, we haven't even built out what we have while we're worried about where we're going to. Is there a plan that shows build out? So where I happen to live, I have sewer, but not water. And I'm sure there's other people with stranger things. I'm not about to trench to connect to one if the other's not available, although that's kind of the position I'm in if something were to fail. It would be nice, I think, for residents to know kind of 2027, I'm gonna have this or something. Is there a pie in the sky plan that we may or may not ever hit, but at least we're striving towards, or is it just no one has any idea, or? Right?
Oh, yeah, that's something we can check with our township engineer too, because I don't believe there's like at least to my knowledge, I'll double check, but like a detailed, you know, kind of phase plan like we have with, you know, for example, we're going through our pathways and the phases on reconstruction. We have our boundaries, though we can expand within that boundary, but to my knowledge, there's not really a detailed plan with that.
Okay.
That's something I can
go.
touch
I
base with our
think-
engineer. Is there?
Yes.
Okay.
Years ago, there was a list of goals for expansion. And that was actually what led to that, the sale of the property. They wanted you to connect thing. I think
Correct.
part of that was because the current infrastructure was so underutilized that it was difficult to expand because they didn't have enough people using the system. And so the idea was that if you got more users on the part that was already built out, it would create more funding to be able to extend it further. And somehow we haven't really worked to expand the system. In fact, we've actually rolled back from what our goals were. And we really need to get back focused to that. You know, I look at the homes along Tanglewood and those people are all having septic problems. They all are in a unconforming site with regard to the size of system they need and how far they are from water. And here we are replacing the whole road to put water in, but we're not extending sewer. And that just, to me, is ludicrous. It's insane. We all know there's a problem there and we should be addressing it.
Where's that at? Actually, I don't know. Where's that?
Tanglewood runs along Trout Creek,
Okay,
Drive,
okay,
Berger.
yeah, Tanglewood,
You know,
okay.
that whole area.
Oh, really? So we
All
have
the
the
homes
road
in there are
out
having
and we're putting
problems.
in water and they don't have septic.
Nope, but there's the lift station right at the corner of Thornapple and Tanglewood. Of course, there's an expense to increase the capacity of the system to handle that, but it's something that really it's the right thing to do.
I would argue on the topic of the right thing to do. As much as I love parks, gotta get that in. As much as I love the pathway, I think the priority should be, we should have a plan for sewer and septic. I mean, if we have phases for the next X number of years for a pathway, you sure as heck should have something publicly available. Availability.
Yes.
How about a plan for paving Cascade Road, or are we just gonna drive on gravel for the rest of our days?
You know, there's bricks under.
Gosh.
All right, so Brian will get that. We'll come back to us at the next meeting. Member Moxley.
Yeah, I hope you all saw the article in Grand Rapids Press yesterday regarding PFAS contamination. The Michigan Attorney General is suing the airport over PFAS pollution in Cascade Township. On September 8th, Netzel asked a Kent County Circuit Court judge to declare the airport liable for PFAS contamination in nearby wells, force a cleanup, reimburse state response and remediation costs, and pay civil fines under the State Natural Resources and Environmental Protection Act, and includes a request for natural resource damages.
But it
After
doesn't-
2 years of dealing with these guys, I'm happy to see this.
But it doesn't specifically say anything about determining any contribution to the pollution in the river or anything about their waste, their stormwater going to the river in there, does it?
In other articles, it does. I can send them to
In
you.
other articles?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's my concern is that I feel that I guess my concern is I want to make sure she's not falling short there because,
It's very specific about stormwater and our river.
okay.
So I'll follow those, I'll find those articles and send them to everybody. It'd be wonderful.
I got a letter in the mail from Eagle saying that we've been identified as, you know, a house to get free testing. So
Thought you were labeled as a polluter.
that too.
Yes.
I got the same letter. They came out and tested and found we had high levels of PFOS and PFAS. And we actually have a person from EGLE coming in Thursday night to our Tamaron community to speak to us about this very issue. I also picked up a water purification kit
Mhm.
from Kent County Health Department. And if I have to hire a plumber to install it, they'll reimburse me $300 for doing that. Actually, I'm gonna just put it in tomorrow myself, so.
If anybody has a reverse osmosis, you can get a PFAS filter for your reverse osmosis.
Okay. I'm thinking of doing reverse osmosis for the kitchen sink is a separate thing,
That's what we have.
and the refrigerator.
That's what we did. Fridge and the kitchen sink, and we have a PFAS filter. And it's not cheap. It's $100, but you gotta do it every year, but
The filter itself.
If the AG has determined that the airport is the one who provided your PFAS, then they have to provide you clean temporary drinking water, and it's not a point of service. They can get a whole house filter.
I don't think that the
Airport
airport is a
didn't do-
polluter for his. I think it might be somebody else.
I think it's,
Somebody who
I
was
won't
here.
mention, it starts with an L.
Yeah. Does anybody else have any, this is great news. Thank you for bringing it up, Ralph. I will identify those articles and send them to everybody. Any other business?
nope.
All right, hearing none. We have any visitors on
We're
Zoom?
up on the hill, so we should be okay.
She said no?
She did.
Oh, sorry.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Support? Motion by member Rissy, supported by member Ringo. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye, yeah.
Well.